sharing your Monday afternoon with us. We've got lots of great information to share this afternoon, and I know the board will have lots of questions as we get these great reports that you've all worked on for us, so I appreciate it. At this time, board members, do you have any changes to the agenda? All right, with that said, Superintendent, Deputy Superintendent, could you please come forward and...
Absolutely. So good afternoon, and while I'm speaking, if our Operations Support Services presenters, please join me up here. So you're going to have 9 of us sitting up here at this time, a little bit different format than what we've done in the past. Let me give you some context to that and rationale behind it. We know that these reports can be very lengthy and they can be very dry at times. So our intent is to give to, and thus Mary requested that we get these reports to you about a week in advance, as typical. So those are provided to you ideally and typically known for this board. You have reviewed those and you have written all over them and have all kinds of questions. So what's going to happen today is I'm going to ask each person for a department that they're responsible for just to give you a statement. They can emphasize something that's in the report or give additional information to you just to add additional context. From there, our intent is to ideally spend between 40 to 45 minutes question, answer, and dialogue around the reports and interests that you have to delve deeper into their specific topics. Are we missing? No, it's Donna.
Yes.
Okay. All right, there we go. All right, with that, let's start.
Good afternoon. So you received 5 reports from facilities from my departments as well. I know they read like a great novel, so I hope you enjoyed them. And so I'm going to turn it over to the team here. Sherry's going to talk about facilities development. Matt Lichtenfeld is going to talk about our energy and resource conservation. And then Nathan actually gave you 3 reports. He's going to talk about maintenance, custodial, and our contracted services, which includes a lot of our compliance work and our facility improvement projects. Just very quickly, I think the common themes you see in all the reports, hopefully as you read them, is that there's a lot of hard work going on, a lot of progress to improve our schools, and especially over the short summer we had, the team did a great job this year as well. Certainly a focus on continuous improvement and improving our efficiency, even in tight times with limited budget, that we're trying to get as much done as we can, and always working to do more for our district, regardless of those funds or the market that we're facing. And then also vision for the future within the department there, better learning facilities, and again, trying to improve the delivery of our services as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry.
Good afternoon. It's so good to see each one of you. We finished off the summer with another brand new school. Hazeldale is complete and beautiful, and I know that there is a very special event happening there in a couple weeks. When we get to be in it with others and just celebrate the fact that all the children are there too. We're continuing on with William Walker, of course. I would say that as I kind of look forward, I think our challenges are going to continue to be with our authorities having jurisdiction. We continue to have interesting things that are being put on our plate that we need to handle, and we're working through those. But I would say that that's a challenge that we face. The new Bond Accountability Committee members, thank you so much for those folks. They have already engaged very well. We were able to tour one of the gentlemen to several of our schools. Very engaging folks, lots of experience. We're happy to have them on board to help us navigate all that's in front of us. And then I would just in closing, kind of the next thing I would say is I just look forward to the next bond. The sooner we can know that we're moving forward with that and have approved funding to do that, the better served our communities will be as we study our current stock of buildings, as we always do, of course. But just work through what it's going to look like for the next several years in our district. So thank you for all of your support. We've so enjoyed working collaboratively alongside, again, the Bond Accountability Committee and the board.
Hello, I'm Matt Lichtenfeld, Energy Manager for the district. Thanks for your time today. It's my first time being here. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to comment on what we're doing on energy and the energy front in the district. We're doing pretty well. We have a number of Energy Star rated schools. Our portfolio average is 90 out of 100 possible points. Majority of our schools are Energy Star certified. We're hoping to increase that number 5 to 10 schools in the next year or two. Our department works really closely with facilities development, Sherry's group, and maintenance, this guy, to provide upgrade opportunities for mainly HVAC, complete HVAC control systems, as well as LED lighting systems. So bond funds and SB 1149 funds, the program that I manage, help pay for that. I wanted to touch briefly on electricity. So we have seen electricity rise over the last year or two in terms of cost and usage. Mainly it tracks with square footage increases, with increased staffing levels, occupancy, hours of operation, and use in the schools. So we've been roughly flat on electricity, but it makes up the biggest chunk of our budget. Natural gas and water, it kind of flipped in the last 5 years. Natural gas is historic lows, but water has really become an issue in terms of usage and cost. So we're actively looking at that and seeing how we can trim usage and costs down and look at ways we can invest in water savings technologies since we don't have any funding to do that. And so lastly, I'll just say that our department is committed to delivering sound building system investment upgrades to all facilities, and that we will deliver energy and cost savings while enhancing the learning environment through improved air quality and improved lighting management. That's really our goal. Thanks.
Great.
Alrighty. Well, since the last time we got together, we projected a lot of information there, and it was nice to actually see that our projections were pretty much spot on because I was producing the same plots with actual data tied to them. One of the things just to bring to your attention is the first plot that you encountered, the second plot you encountered showing the work order completion on the side. One thing that's showing is our ever-increasing workload, but I think that the more telling piece is that our ability to complete that work is actually climbing faster. I'm hoping in our next report that we actually can show us surpassing the amount coming in because we still maintain about a 600 work order backlog. Some common things like Paul mentioned, labor and non-labor budgets rampant throughout my report of I need more. Unfortunately, customer service is directly correlated to the amount of money I can spend because it means the department can do work for others. The same piece also comes into our staffing, recruiting, and hiring. It's still a challenge in the market out there to find qualified staff to work for us, and it's just because the market is still so hot with construction out there that as we attempt to attract technical folks into our vacancies, there's better opportunities right now. Something that's, as we begin to look forward, as we feel like we've got our arms around our existing body of work, things that are emerging on the horizon, we're noticing an increasing technical complexity of the systems we're installing, and that's having a direct impact on the type of technicians we have. It's no longer a light switch on the wall, it's a computer that runs the lighting control system, and finding someone with the expertise to be able to control that is proving to be a challenge. The other piece that we are continually working is trying to put a better picture of a budget-informed standard of care. And you see phrases like level of service and zero-based budgeting, and that's where we've attempted to tie the work we do to our budget. And then what does that look like to the customers? So as they're screaming for more, we can help inform them of how that works. Looking forward at our custodial program, we've had some tremendous successes there. Again, like Sherry mentioned, opening Hazeldale, although there was small challenges, they did not reflect the challenges that we've seen in previous years. So it's good to know that we learned. It's also, we still have a couple more to go. Something that I think has been a hidden success of the custodial department is what I've described as emergency response in the report. When we start hearing of disease outbreaks in schools, we come in very fast and very heavy with some very strong cleaners to try and make sure that that first call is all that anybody hears, and disinfecting schools very rapidly. And I think, to the testament of the department, it's been a couple of years now we've been doing this, and we haven't had rampant disease outbreaks that have made the media. Something that is a concern as we're still getting our arms around it, the ever-expanding community use program. Primarily, it's just the custodial support of these programs. And then with that, we've seen that the incremental addition of early childhood, of daycares, of all these different programs is trying to get our arms around what that impact is to the custodial cleaning, and a lot of that it correlates to basically revisiting how we clean a school to see where we are, and then that naturally circles back to staffing. Looking at contracted services, now this is something that has surfaced as where we spend the bulk of our money in the maintenance department. We take care of all the materials and concerns hosted that is covered by the Healthy and Safe Schools Initiative. To date this year, to the end of last fiscal year, we completed over 548 work orders and 236 projects to the tune of about $3 million of work completed by the department. This is both in and above our maintenance. Some of this money is actually funded by school programs, FIP programs, so it's parents and boosters that are funding some of this work. It's one of those issues that our FIP program is a continually expanding capacity. You see a little tip down in the plot. That's actually because we had 3 vacancies for most of the year as we attempted to fill project coordinators. We didn't have 3 projects, so we actually slowed down work-wise. Those positions as of today are now full, so we expect that to start running away on us. It seems to be a program that anytime we add resources to it, the workload seems to expand with it. And then lastly, with that, we still see the influence of market conditions impacting us pretty substantially. Pending your questions, we'll pass the torch to
So Mr. Sparks. So with long-range planning, just remember the word boundaries and all variations of boundaries. We'll be talking a lot about that this year. Obviously, the middle school boundaries is the biggest project, but we do have attendance imbalances across the district, particularly in our elementary schools, that we've been paying very close attention to, and I think we need to hit more substantially with moving some attendance boundaries to get that balance back. The city of Beaverton is likely to get a UGB expansion down in the south part of the district. Good news is most of the development areas in the Hillsborough School District attendance area. Bad news is we may be facing the same kind of hoo-ha that we experienced a few years ago with that. So we're continuing to have a dialogue with my counterparts over at we're trying to have a dialogue with my counterparts over there, and there's nothing to report yet, but we are definitely keeping an eye on that. In response to that UGB expansion, the prior UGB expansion, and the possibility of a future bond, capital bond program, we also have an update to the facilities plan that we're contemplating on that as well. And we need to have that facilities plan updated every 10 years or so, and we're 8 years in right now. So, in terms of facility use, you heard Nathan talk about impacts to custodial. One of the things that we implemented this year is kind of a community use night. Instead of them being every single night during the week, we're calling on Tuesday evenings. If you want to come in and you want to be kind of a subsidized use in the building, it's Tuesday night. And that way the impact of the school is one night a week. The impact to the custodial staff is one night a week. It doesn't mean that a Tier C user can come in any old night. That's still open. But we won't have the 4 nights in a row of Boy Scouts or those kinds of things. We're trying to get to that consistency of public access, that predictability, and there are growing pains for the community out there, particularly when it comes to after-school uses. We are very conscious of the building security and maintaining a safe environment for everyone within those buildings. And you've heard us talk about prop doors, and I think I can say for everyone here that we all talk about prop doors all the time from our different perspectives, and we're trying to support each other on that.
And then lastly, I'll say that I think we're done with the THPRD IGA. There are a couple of things that we are, I'll say that we're at impasse over, but I don't think they're at impasse to the point of, collapse of the agreement. I think there's going to be some, I know there's going to be growing pains, and there's going to have to be, there will be some disappointed people. But, that's part of this agreement and the limited resources and the demand that we all are trying to manage. So I'll turn it over to whoever's next.
All right. So Mike Better, Nutrition Services. I survived my first year. I just wanted to thank you guys for allowing me the opportunity to work for this wonderful district. It actually was a real challenge for me, just getting used from 5 schools to 54 to I lose track sometimes. But it's such a wonderful honor to be working here and also speaking in front of you. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk. I gave you guys our report, and there's some information that has unfortunately changed. The negative balance is not $15,000 anymore. Now it's $25,400. So that was 10 days difference. So in 10 days, we grew $10,000 more. So, that's really, it's not fun, watching that grow. We spent a lot of money. I estimate just in my head, we probably spent about $7,000 of our money trying to deal with phone calls, with letters home, sending, self-addressed envelopes, everything, trying to be very, very creative. We were able to add in new language into our policy that does say that BSD may pursue payment through collection agency. It was kind of more of just kind of throwing it out there just to see what happens, but obviously it's not working, unfortunately. I think the word's out with this. Portland Public was $250,000 last year or something like that, and we were 60 something. So that's pretty awesome. But unfortunately, we're kind of rising up very, very quickly. With nutrition services also being, we're one of the only department that is required to be a profitable department, and so we always have that hanging over our heads. I did recently see our reports from last year, and we actually made profit. So that's pretty good considering we had a very generous raise, and they definitely deserve that. And so first year, I was really glad to see that as well. Some of you guys will keep me, hopefully. And so we're looking good with that. And then also with our numbers, you also saw some reductions in the participation rates from lunch as breakfast. And I've been tracking that monthly, meeting with my supervisors and discussing kind of opportunities for us. Challenges are just part of the job, and so we always look at those. And so we are we're part of this breakfast challenge. It's the state breakfast challenge. And so we picked out some of our lowest performing schools in the district, and I'm just going to tell you the percentages because our goal is to help boost our breakfast. And the way it works is if we can boost our percentage, then we actually get like $3,000 per site if we win the whole state. So our goal is to be #1 in the state for increasing. So I'm really excited about this because our first site is going to be Errol Hassel, and right now we're at 12.4% of the kids are eating breakfast, which is really low. Okay. By the way, this is the best of these 4. So, and then our next one is Findlay. They are at 0.19, so they're almost 2%. So we have some great opportunities there, right? And then our other 2 sites are Oak Hills, 3%, and Rock Creek, 4.44%. So great thing is I get to use somebody else's money to try some creative things to help boost our breakfast program. Through we have some media that we're going to be sending out. We're working on a nutrition services logo as well. Also, we're trying to continue on focusing on customer service. I like to walk around the Capitol Center where our office is at, and I was noticing there was a Hispanic family who was looking in the doors at each little window in the building. And the reason why is because there was nothing in Spanish anywhere on the buildings telling them where nutrition services was. And I was like, we got to fix that. And so that's something else we're also working is trying to focus on customer service, taking those barriers away. That's kind of the main focus of our department as well. It's not just making things equitably, but finding a way to get rid of that barrier a good image that I saw at a recent meeting I went to where they had 3 children standing on a wall watching a baseball game. I think that was awesome. And so they had this little child, and they were making things equality. So all the benches were the same height, but the little kid still not see because it was all equal, but they still couldn't see. And then they had equity where you kind of made them all equal in height, but there was still that wall. And then, but if you focus on getting rid of those barriers, then guess what? That child can stand on their own 2 feet without any help and actually see the game. So I thought that was, for me, that was like, whoa, that was really, really cool. And so we're trying to focus on that as well. Just remove those barriers, and then hopefully find out. Because in my opinion, I think what we're serving at our schools is better than I've ever seen any school district ever serve. From all muscle chicken, from an incredible salad bar to spending almost $2 million. I think last year just in local products and local foods. $2 million, and that's a nice house. Yeah, maybe here, maybe not, but so I mean, we're doing such wonderful, wonderful things that I really want people to understand that about what we do, and things like that. And we also are starting to do some really cool homemade things. We're actually just started making a grilled cheese sandwich, homemade. So I mean, how exciting is that? But still, I mean, we are taking those.
Hold on to some of the news.
But that's all I have. I just want to let you know, I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you. Thank you very much.
All right, with that, transportation.
Hi, good afternoon, thanks for inviting me. Overall, we carried more kids, both from special ed and regular ed, this past year than we did in prior years. We drove more miles, both in activity trips and in our regular and special ed things. However, our overall cost went up about 13.5%, but the good news, at least to us, is that our overall cost per mile only went up 2%. So it still indicates we improved our efficiency, we control our head, do daily cost controls, and part of that 13% obviously is a 3% wage increase, which is tremendous for us. I mean, it's all, most of our highest costs obviously is wages and benefits, just like everybody else. We do have a couple of challenges in the future that I'm watching closely. One of them is the continuation of the high school activity buses, what our real return on investment is. And then what we don't know yet, but I'm concerned about is the cost of the pre-kindergarten services that we're going to be offering. We're rolling out 5 schools this year, and the plan is to continue to roll out 2 a year. Some of the original model that we looked at doesn't look like it's going to be able to fit that way. And so we're going to get a double whammy in terms of not just only a higher cost, but less reimbursable cost. Any questions?
First off, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. So, thank you very much for allowing us to come and share a little bit. This year we have hit the ground running. We've tripped and fallen a couple times, and we bounced right back up, literally and figuratively. We continue to really look at what our challenges are beginning this year. And in the report, I put a lot of the overall picture. One of the things that has really caught our attention, at least in public safety, is from August 27th when we first started school to the last day of school in September. It's 24 school days. We had 53 threat assessments already in that time period, and with about right now probably about a dozen of those going to a level 2, which means that they were significant in nature that we had to take a look at a little bit more in depth with our law enforcement partners and community partners. So we continue to see those come in, and so part of that is how do we partner with our already partners and to see if there's any other resources that can support us in the public safety aspect of that. So we continue to work with our SPED department, which also leads us to look at an aspect that we overlooked a little bit in public safety is some of the victimization of some of our students as well as some of our staff. When we have these types of incidents, I briefly met this morning with one of our trainers for special ed and talking about those aspects, and so we're going to continue to try to work together to address those to better our safety and security for again, not just our students, but our staff as well. And so one of the exciting things is this year we have started to roll out with some challenges and some resistance. As you are well aware, at the beginning of this year in February, our country was hit with the tragedy at Parkland, Florida, and of course a month later down at Santa Fe, and it just brought a lot of the safety issues to light in our community and within our schools and our students. As you can imagine, our office bombarded by questions is where's our safety, where's our security, where's BSD? With that, it really allowed me as the director to take a look at where we're at. I'm very proud and happy to say that we are actually a role model right now for school districts all over the state. We have been contacted here recently by 7 school districts just inquiring what we are doing and how they can do better. And so we continue to model that. I'm also very, very clear to them is that we still have areas of vulnerability, areas of weaknesses that we need to strengthen as well. But it is very humbling to see that a district our size can be that role model to other districts, and so that's exciting. Part of that, in regards to the safety and security, one of the big things was the visibility. Is the questions that we got is, if we have security, where are they? And so we started to roll out this year the visibility of some of our campus supervisors just to be identified as public safety and being visible to the common public. Again, just dealing with some resistance there in looking at, because it's change. And you know, and it's change, but it's also a change to improve the quality. I think if there's one thing that stood out when I first started here 17 months ago, 6 days and 7 hours ago, it was one of the things that actually Dawn had mentioned when I first heard Dawn speak was the customer service, and I think a few have alluded to that. That's always been huge for me, because in law enforcement for 24 years, that customer service is translating to community policing, and that's bringing your community together with your law enforcement. Well, in this case, we have just that one other element of our schools, community, law enforcement, how you bridge that together. And so this is one of those steps to do that, and of course it's new, so of course we've received some challenges and some resistance to that, but we're working through that. I like a good challenge, just like I like a good breakfast in the morning, so I may go to Finley or something like that. So, the other part of the customer service aspect is we've been out at several PTOs. I know that I received a letter through Carl about one of the PTOs at Mountain View that be able to talk to a lot of our PTOs about school safety, but not just in English, but also in Spanish. And so reaching that portion of our diverse community has been just a real great asset to that. Also just reaching out recently to over 100 third graders at Rock Creek Elementary, and just reaching out and talking to them about emergency management. So just the visibility, school clubs, MECHA, and so many, and being able to just impart the message behind safety and security being a job of not just one person or one entity in the school, but everybody's job. And so we will continue to bring that together in our district with our district office, as well as our parents, our students, and our staff. It is quite the task with the district this size, but customer service is one of our focuses, and we'll continue to strive to provide the adequate training and best practices for all involved in public safety. So thank you for allowing me to continue here for the time being.
So you may be wondering why we had all of these departments all at the same time. This group of people I meet with on a monthly basis together. And the reason for that is that there's so many interconnections. You may be talking about something about transportation, and quickly it translates to facilities, or something in nutrition services. It is so interconnected. So their reports, you may be seeking an answer from one. I promise you there may be 3 different answers to that too. So I think that's an important part of the conversation here. So at this time, we'll turn it over to you.
So you're okay with just kind of us doing a popcorn,
You can
whatever?
popcorn, however.
Any way that, so I think probably what we'll do, I don't know if it's more important to you that you get all of your questions at the same time, or if you want one question and then let it go. So we'll just take it as it is, and we've got about a half an hour to ask those questions. So we'd like to start, Susan?
So Sherry, I guess we'll try it, although questions that popped in my head when I was hearing your little comments just now. You mentioned that there were like some hiccups, and I was just wondering if those hiccups are like, in terms of processes, are they outside forces like the city of Beaverton and Washington County getting permits, or is it some other type of hiccups that you were talking about?
So, and I'll probably hand this over to Steve here in a minute because he's our expert. But yes, there are, what's happening that really to me has the biggest impact right now are just the conditions that are being placed on us as we go for a permit. For example, the city is now talking about they'd like us to put a water line in around ACMA, though we don't see it as a need. They do. And then they would like for us to enlarge sidewalks in areas that don't really have anything to do with our school. And then if those sidewalks are there, then we need lighting. And our projects just can't fund all these things. Alignment of roads that we are supposed to go ahead and take care of. And so Steve can kind of speak to those types of things. We're also having other challenges of just fees that we think are very steep, especially when compared. We moved a single portable to Stoller and got a bill for about $1,500 for fees.
From the county.
From Washington County. We moved 2 portables into the city and got a bill for about $40,000. So $20,000 a portable as opposed to $1,500 a portable. And the interesting thing is the city of Beaverton is interpreting Clean Water Services rules about how to charge us. And so we're working through those issues. Steve has a lot more to say about those.
But I won't say it.
Well, I know what's popping in my head right now.
Right.
Your little comment on the bubbles hitting my head that I'm not saying the filter.
And
Now-
so
now I will
we're working with the staff on that one, like Port Almonica. We continue to work with the city and try and build that partnership with the idea that we're partner agencies and we should work together. The fees, it's very interesting on the impact fees for things as well. That again, and I think that's a higher discussion that we need to bring to Dawn and perhaps to you to have with the city. We're paying impact fees on our schools, which the impact is coming from the development that's happening in the city. And so when we improve our schools and we do this work, we're not creating impact, we are absorbing impact from the development. So I think it's a great question for the future for us to have with the board and with the city about why is that impact being passed on to the school district.
I have a follow-up question with some of these rules that are coming from, or regulations that are coming from the city of Beaverton. Are they policies that are coming from the politicians, the county councilor, or are they coming from, the staff?
Some of both. When I think the most obvious one will be with the new high school and what happened there in terms of the turf field and the like. But in terms of the examples that we've been dealing with over the past year, this is almost entirely staff-driven with their interpretation of what city councilors or the mayor or whomever may want. I'll just say that having lived that life for so many years, I can recognize it when I see it, and I push back on it whenever I see it.
And I should mention too, we've had some really good success, even in this last week. We have had some great success with some misunderstandings on the access road at William Walker, that one of the staff there worked very hard to kind of come up with a solution for us that was not costly at all, a mitigation that was beautiful. So we have hope that there exists pathways. We just have to keep working at it. And really, understanding when to elevate it to the level that is beyond what we can do on a normal basis. We meet with the city every other week. We meet with the county every other week. And we build relationships. And there are new folks being added to their staff that are doing great work. So I think there's hope in the future. But as much as I would like to say we're getting past it all, it just still keeps coming up in specific areas.
And I would just amend one thing that Sherry said is, or build on what Sherry said. Yes, we have the standing meetings every other week. We're on the phone with them every day, or email or something. And it's all the staff, still trying to build that relationship and cooperation.
So, Vicki, would you like me to continue asking
Sure.
other questions? So, I have a transportation question, Craig, and it's really like a future question. I know that we're still transporting kids to grandfathered into, let's say, Beaverton or Southbridge or wherever. What's the cost savings for next year not doing that? Is it significant?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's between $90,000 and $100,000 we're going to save for not having to do that. Unfortunately, there is going to be an additional cost for the additional routes at Mountainside.
Right.
And one of the things, our current model for option students is on the afternoon is to take them from an option school and send them directly to the school. We've always had challenges from Cap Center to Southbridge, and we're going to, now we're going to go Mountainside. So we're really looking at that model, and we're going to need some cooperation somewhere in order to make that work, because we continue with the traffic. It isn't getting any better. The road construction, God bless them, it's going to be great, but while it's going on, it's even tougher. And the waterfall effect to the elementary school and to the middle schools out of Southbridge alone, we're feeling that effect. So yeah, there's a cost savings. There's a probably there's an incremental increase, however.
And, I know you mentioned about like the transportation for preschoolers, and I know that the state is emphasizing, early education, so I'm hoping that they see that, transportation is also part of that. So, I mean, that's not like anything that we can do anything about, but I'm hopeful.
I think Dave's going to take care of that for us.
I'm
Aren't
sure
you,
he
Dave? You
will.
gonna get that law fixed?
We're fighting that battle.
Yeah, sure, because it makes sense. So, Rick, I have a couple questions for you. One, thank you. Thank everybody for all you do, because it's always, you're kind of like hidden and we don't see you that often, and you guys do an awesome job. So, question about the drug use that seems to be increasing at schools because of juuling. So I'm wondering how that's being approached. I mean, that's a safety issue, it's a drug issue at a high level. Like, it seems like I know it's at every high school, and I hear it's at middle schools as well.
We actually just recently, I attended the Safe Schools monthly meeting at Hillsborough School District that all entities hold. We received a presentation of the most current trends of juuling and vaping and some of those things. It has not to get political, but I believe that once Oregon legalized marijuana, it really diminished a lot of the importance of how we're looking at the impact of drugs and how that's impacting with the juuling and the vaping. That was one of my first presentations here recently with the vaping and stuff through the Washington County Health Department. Even I was shocked as to what's taking place at the high levels of the potency of marijuana, the THC, what kids are doing now. Of course, the edibles. That was a recent issue here just last week. Where we confiscated the gummy bears, all those kinds of stuff. So it's a bigger picture, and I don't think we did a favor when we just kind of taken that aspect of drugs overall, and then the accountability issue for our kids, I think is not there where it needs to be, and I think that's creating a mindset of it's okay, and it's not. I mean, because we're starting to see the impacts of those within our kids. We last year, towards the end of last year, we did have a few students transported to some hospitals because of just doing again the impact of drugs as opposed to alcohol. Just really depends on your own body,
Right.
And so when you see that throughout, it's tough to get a grasp on. One of the things that did come out of that meeting is I'm looking at ways to have that training presented to our campus supervisors for the observation of behaviors in kids, as well as our SROs, and so trying to bring that training out to look for signs and see if we can intervene sooner.
Honestly, it seems like it needs to be rolled out to teachers and principals.
Right, that's actually a conversation Don and I and Maureen were having this
Okay.
last week, and that we potentially need to be doing as a district, or as a district-wide campaign. Parents are probably the least informed on this issue, really having no idea what juuling is. They very much thinking it's harmless and this sort. So we're looking at what is it we can be doing as a district to put some significant information out there to help inform. So the parents are aware, the edibles, all those types of things. Parents are just, well, they're just gummy bears. Well, no, they're not. There's far more to it. So it's helping to educate our parents, but as a district, we want to own that in terms of taking some responsibility to push that information out.
Great,
to
I
our community
appreciate
as a
that.
whole.
That's all I
Yeah.
have. Thank you.
Leanne?
Okay, I've got a couple of, some are really quick. Facilities, quick question. I know we're in the second phase at Five Oaks, which is right at my back doorstep. How many phases are we going through? Because from the outside, it doesn't look like they're making any progress. I know they are, but I'm just curious. They moved a lot of dirt, and that's it.
Yeah, you should come inside. So phase one is what we just completed over the summer, and that was creating 5 classrooms up in the second gym, temporarily for classrooms to move the children who were in the portables, which were moved, right?
Yeah.
And now phase 2 is all we're finishing, and that's where we'll start to see the entire building bump out. The front entrance will be completely reconfigured, but yes, so much is going on inside. There are construction walls now in the building. It's a lot is going on inside. Yeah, we should do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Then for facilities, in the report, it talked about back of the house organics.
Yes,
And I just wondered, is that a fancy name for composting?
it is.
I just wanted to make sure. That was my simple question there.
Easy answer that.
From the kitchen.
And Nathan, the incredible need for additional custodians. What's the plan to get those 42 additional hired?
That's kind of what's got us hamstrung right now. I mean, we're trying to figure out the resourcing that would be needed and how those folks would be deployed. I think what we have really been focused on is where they would go and why they would be needed, and I think that's a lot of what that budget informed standard of care discussion and embarking on this is to better craft that need. DMC rolled through its report a couple years ago and said, yes, based on simple square footage analysis, you need this many more. When we first took a look at that, it's like, well, that's a lot of people. I don't know if we could justify, if any of them stand around, that investment. So we started to lean in and look at how we cleaned the building, how we managed our staff. And what we're seeing is our early models, we didn't really factor in anybody taking vacations. So we're always confused why we're having some trouble keeping up. Well, when you start to factor in a 9 to 13% burden, vacation, sick leave kind of rate, then you start like, well, that's why things aren't getting done. So we have been trying to kind of get that detail put in there, as well as if we were to approach cleaning solutions a certain way, would we be cleaning every night, every other night? Would we do this in every single space in the district? So we've been essentially just building models, applying that level of detail instead of a very homogeneous level. So that's where the 42 would deploy out. We're trying to target as a priority because we felt, I think that number is close to $4 million if it was actually staffed, that we would not see that kind of addition at any one singular point. And how would we bring the staff up to that?
Thank you. Let's see, long-range planning. So you made some comments under Boundaries Elementary School with William Walker and Elmonica, and I wrote next to it, what does this mean? Are we going to look at an elementary boundary adjustment in those areas?
So I think we need to take a good hard look at our central part of the district because of the imbalance. For example, William Walker will open up next year at about 58% capacity. And Elmonica has, I believe it's 760 kids this year. 140 40, I think it is, kindergartners. That school is just exploding. And, we can talk about the city and what the city's approved in that area as contributing to that. But if you look at where the kids are, it's really on the west side of El Monica, so it's really going to involve Beaver Acres, McKinley, and perhaps Kinnaman to help El Monica that way. And then you have Barnes in the middle, and is that going to be a full immersion, and what does that mean? So there's a lot of different moving parts out there.
So are you thinking after the middle school, we'll really take a look at maybe doing some internal adjustments then? I mean, what do you, because it's noted here, I'm just trying to prepare myself, what does that mean?
I am working on a proposal right now to present to Carl that would do it this year, if that would be effective the next school year.
All right. And my last is just a comment to Mike. I loved your looking for every opportunity to make a very memorable experience. I thought that was awesome.
Thank you.
Way to go. And that's it.
Great. Eric?
Okay, so I'll mix it up. I don't think you have any questions yet. Power, electricity.
Power.
One thing was I like your graphs in there. What about have you guys had any baseline on how the new schools cost versus old schools?
Yes, definitely. Well, for instance, Bose. Bose was in the neighborhood of, what we look at as energy performance metric is EUI, and it's the Energy Use Index. That's basically electricity and natural gas converted to BTUs. And so it's kilobTUs per square foot per year. And we are seeing essentially a reduction in the energy costs with Bose by about 10 points. So 40 down to 30. And we're providing such, the school was just phenomenal, just as an educational space. But we're going from like these short ceiling schools that are, dark to these, big, open, voluminous schools, and it's quite something to behold. We're even seeing in just our retrofits like Cedar Meadow Park, we're adding air conditioning to these schools, and we're lowering energy use because the HVAC systems are so efficient. We have such good HVAC controls that we're able to really optimize, basically providing better air quality, better ventilation to the kids and the staff there, but controlling that better, and lowering costs by shutting things off and not using it when we're not there. So that's a couple of examples. We've had really good luck with this bond and with school startup. In the past, we've seen it's taken a year or two to control our new schools. Now it's a matter of months where we're seeing it perform to design expectations. So we've had, it's been really, really quite good. We've had a little bit of a bump with Mountainside being under control. That's probably the one hiccup we've had, where we had some overrides to flush out the space that were somehow made permanent for a couple of months, but we did find it, and we were able to, through that control system that's visible into like trending and how the school's operating on a day-to-day basis, we were able to adjust that and get it back under control.
So mostly a really good story for like Maureen and everybody to say, hey, we're energy efficient and
Absolutely.
better space, better quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really a shout out to our maintenance department, I have to say, because the folks that take care of our buildings are amazing. At the district level, our HVAC technicians, our HVAC foremen, those are the ones who are in there spending their weekends figuring out these brand new buildings that we've created, getting them to operate the way they should operate. It's not that easy. And so really kudos to Nathan and his staff who, with my staff, they're collaborating on a really, really good level to bring us this great success. And Vos, I will point out, is 100% outside air, meaning fresh air. And the fact that it's not costing us more money is just phenomenal.
So Eric, I also want to add a comment here what Matt was mentioning. Trying to figure out Mountainside. The other piece of this was Mountainside having only 50% of its grade levels there last year. We made some assumptions that we would need to staff that building fully for custodial purposes and everything. As you well know, teachers find space and they spread. They occupied probably close to 80 to 85% of that building in their first year. And so it changed the dynamics in terms of what then required cleaning, because you've got students, you've got staff in various spaces. So not only did we suffer some, not consequences, but challenges, shall we say, on the energy end of things, it was also staffing-wise to just staff that building.
Good. I guess I'll fire one more question. So Rick, we'll get you engaged again. I know, what about like risk management? You mentioned a little bit, like, there's been some incidents and sped. Is there any other like stuff we can do just to make sure to mitigate, district risk on incidents that happen? Like you mentioned before, victimization of like maybe an employee.
I have been in contact with risk management, talking about that. The other piece is the training. There has been, I know that more specifically from public safety, when I first arrived here 17 months ago and met with my campus supervisors, I did ask them about training, and it was crickets. So there had not been any training for them in the past several years. And you and I both know that in order to maintain best practice, you've got to keep up with current trends. And this is one of those aspects about deconfliction, verbal de-escalation. I mean, there's other techniques that we can continue to train our campus supervisors, other staff. I know SPED has done a wonderful job in continuing to train their folks in addressing our special needs students throughout the district. Sometimes you just can't help that. I mean, there's a couple incidents that happened this year. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. When we talk about re-victimizations, some of those have to do with some significant stuff, some, exposing some of our sexually exploited victims, students in the same building with, their perpetrators. And so taking a look at working with our partnership with like Washington County Juvenile, addressing some of those issues on the safety of our students as well, and the exposure to the community and the threats. And so a lot of dynamics in there that we are taking into account, but it is taking a huge collaboration to make sure that we address it appropriately without creating more risks to our students first and foremost, but as well as our staff. So it's a real big picture that we're working on.
But Nathan, the question that I had as I walked through your reports was that it seemed to me that in addition to just having short-term customer service issues, that your areas would probably have some impact on our long-term costs to maintaining our facilities. And I was wondering what effort we were making to try to better understand the costs that our choices today are pushing down as we plan for future bond measures and do other things. It seems like we're just asking different people to pay at different times, and maybe we should better understand those choices. Do you have any insight on that?
We've been learning a lot through this bond. I think it's one of the first pieces. With things like lighting control, theatrical lighting control, they're more technologically advanced system, and that's where we're sort of seeing how we can adapt some of our people to be able to take care of the programming and the maintenance of those systems. Something that just recently came up is with our investment in the security projects, we're installing a lot of electronic hardware to open and unlock doors. From a maintenance standpoint, we don't stock any of that. So is that something we need to really start thinking about? Do we manage that through contracted services, or do we put parts on a shelf so we can do the repairs? And we're kind of going through those pros and cons right now. Looking out, we're honestly trying to actually lean forward in preventive and predictive maintenance methodologies. We're at a point where we feel like we've got our arms around our current workload. But the issue that we're seeing is we still have some fragile systems that are approaching the end of their life. If we can get in there predictively, proactively, and replace those systems in a non-emergency setting, we can save the district a fortune of money. If we have to do it on a Friday afternoon because it went down and school's got to open Monday, it's going to become very, very expensive repair. So we are trying to take a pretty forward lean into getting those systems quantified and what the potential costs and risks we're looking at, so we can focus investment, and then we can also focus in repair. The challenge is we have to, in order to get the staff to do this, we have to sort of steal from one to take care of the other. So we're kind of working through how to move some of our generalist staff around. They can go do some of this predictive and preventative work, working underneath the tradesmen. An example would be maintenance workers working for a HVAC technician, doing all the major system maintenance on a large air handling unit versus waiting for that thing to fail and then going in there with a repair team and going to fix it all. Also taking a look at where we're using redundant systems now. You know, a big air handling unit has multiple compressors on it. One can fail without any loss of performance. It's finding where we've been running on the backup system and can we lean in and fix the primary system before we lose both and have to then do an emergency repair. And then in addition to that, we're also trying to evolve the way we condition assess our buildings. And this is kind of a place where we're just embarking on a more disciplined facility condition assessment. And this is also leading into the next bond planning, is to say this is a better way for us to take a look at our systems, at our facilities, and those exact questions that you had. Are we making a first cost investment with a long life cycle cost or vice versa? And in some cases, maybe we should be looking at more dependable, less technologically advanced systems. But then when you get to efficiencies, I know Matt and I, we go back and forth on this all the time. He's got some very, very neat stuff, except I have nobody to take care of it.
I can speak to that too, just from the side of, the facility development department. There's almost 30 of us, and having that be an internal team, they know our schools. We're halfway through. There is our technical standards that have been written primarily by the maintenance department, who cares a lot about how much it costs to maintain these systems. We don't purchase leading edge technology. We only take technology that's been proven, and we do a life cycle cost. We look at first cost versus what is this going to be down the road with regard to maintenance. And I say that the team that's on board right now is really, as Nathan would say, leaning into that conversation. We're constantly updating our technical design standards with what we learn. We conduct lesson learned meetings every fall, multiple lessons learned meetings, and we put those lessons into our technical design standards to further inform our choices for the future. There are some technologies, though, that save immense amounts of time and energy and, frankly, staff. Right now we're doing a graphical user interface upgrade of all of our HVAC systems that's costing less than $800,000, and will end up being at the place where any custodian can open his phone and figure out what's going on with HVAC systems, where previously there were 2,000 alarms that would come up. He wouldn't have any clue what to go do, and we'd have to call out a maintenance person. Now our custodians and other building officials can actually take a look on their phone at what's going on in the system and fix it.
And I'll just to add, so we are trying to improve our assessment of the facilities, and we hope that will help us as we go forward as well. But we are, and as we try to make our crew more efficient and better, we're doing those analysis of how we do our work and how we complete it. But we are just barely above a breakdown maintenance state at this point. We are prioritizing what comes in, and we're creating a list of deferred and unfunded work that's growing as we sit here today as well. So it's one of those things. We're coming up with some good solutions, but I do believe there has to be an infusion of cash into the maintenance for the future of the district to try and arrest the backlog and the deterioration of our district.
I guess the piece that's interesting to me is that I understand that some things are routine and we need to stay on top of those, and then there are some things that are unexpected things that break. And I guess it's my main interest to make sure that we're on top of them. And I'm not sure that we have the full set of what's routine that's becoming part of backlog maintenance, but that was what I was curious. Does that make sense?
It does.
I mean, I hear a lot about the technology, which is awesome, and I'm so excited to hear. But then I also know, the roof at Beaverton, is that routine, or is that deferred maintenance that we just didn't get to, or pipes that we have so many different levels of maintenance-ish things.
Right.
Lots of ish.
There's a lot of prioritization that goes on too. I mean, something like a roof leak, an HVAC repair, those will prioritize above, let's say, a pothole. And that would probably be one of the biggest areas where you hear us talk about deferring and unfunding work. Is paving is incredibly expensive. And we're to a place where, in our analysis, what we originally estimated as a simple slurry seal is now a grind and inlay. And by the time we get to the work, there may be quite a bit of full depth work asphalt that will be very expensive to do. But ultimately, we have gravel parking lots as well, and that's where it's kind of heading. So this doesn't mean the school doesn't function, it just means we don't have this nice, pretty asphalt parking lot. It is something that we have to consider because Craig drives some very heavy pieces of equipment, and they need to get to the school. So we've been, taking a very judicious look at fixing bus lanes and things like that. I know there's a big old pothole at TSC we got to address that I get constant calls on, but it's very expensive work. So that's where we're kind of ebbing back and forth through is to try and set those priorities. So things like an HVAC system or a water leak or a roof leak is being addressed immediately.
Yeah.
But to some sacrifice that sidewalks and asphalt may not be getting us just as fast.
I probably more, but you go while I go through my stuff.
I'll piggyback on your last question, because I've got two specific questions. I think that's a really good question. Do we have a system for PMs where we prioritize and we are constantly looking at it from like a systems level? And then my other question is, have we measured deferred maintenance in such a way that we understand the additional cost we're taking on in future years because we haven't done something right now?
Yes, I was going to say for your first question, yes, but we do have a preventive maintenance system. It still requires manpower to physically go out and do that work. And sometimes we start seeing the next boiler servicing PM show up before we completed the last boiler service. Fortunately, we have some stakeholders that really help us prioritize that. The city and county inspectors will be out on some of that stuff. Again, it identifies a massive body of work and just making sure we sort of provide staff and time to address that. For the second question, probably not to the level of detail we should, in the sense of trying to get that detail and that analysis in place. We do have very good ideas of what, let's say, the routine cost of a water, a water heater replacement with internal staff versus contracted staff, and then we have a pretty good estimate of what it would cost if that were to fail and we need to replace it. So school could open, and we do have numbers, and those are what concern us when you look at that emergency repair versus routine repair things.
With the PMs, what percentage, are we getting compared to where you would want to be? Maybe that's, if you need to take that offline, that's a hard.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go do a little bit more research because I would honestly say we don't probably put enough detail into our PM scheduling. We have sort of service, roof service, HVAC, mowed lawn. These are some of what generates, and then we utilize those preventive maintenance work orders to catalog time and record that kind of stuff. I think one of the things that we've been talking internally about is trying to make those a little bit more detail specific so I go do this preventive maintenance. It's not like inspect whole HVAC system at the station. It would be more focused by unit, and there would be more clarity.
And that's really wrapped into our improvement we want, which is to improve our facility data assessment tool, as well as how we assess our facilities. Part of that is to add that sophistication to our scheduling and maintenance, especially preventive.
Thanks, guys. Let's see.
We look
Well,
It's a tag
We'll
team.
peek
Oh,
back
yeah,
and forth.
yeah, go for it.
You can find yours while I skim.
Yeah, great.
Mike, I'm wondering about the reduction in the number of students participating, and I wasn't sure if it was percentage or flat numbers, but I was also curious about the disproportionate reduction in the number of free and reduced lunch or free and reduced students who are participating, particularly as we've made reduced free for every, do we have guesses about what's going on?
Yeah, so, we're seeing a reduction just in our overall district's free and reduced percentage. I think it's dropped 1% since I've been here. And then I had the same question when I was looking, I made a worksheet for all my supervisors to go through, and I was like, why are we only feeding 30% of the free and reduced kids? Like, to me, if as a business owner, I'd be like, okay, that makes no sense. It's free. And so there's definitely some opportunities for us with that. One of the theories is that transportation is difficult. Not transportation with buses, but just transportation trying to get to the school is difficult. I know when I drive from Albany every day, just trying to get to work every day on time is super difficult because traffic is just pretty nuts out here.
Yeah, that's just crazy to do.
Yeah.
Luckily, our kids aren't coming.
Yeah. But, it's, and so, like breakfast, for example, why is that? Well, when I'm at a breakfast school and I'm watching, when the kids are just showing up with 3 or 4 minutes until class starts, okay, so what's the barrier there? Well, the barrier is
crazy.
What's that?
It's graceful. It's busted.
Actually, it's just like I said, it's difficult because trying to get a bus there on time with the traffic is super difficult. Just trying to drive my own car, like I said, on time is really difficult. So there's obviously a barrier there. Okay, so our barrier right now is we're serving in the cafeteria. Okay, so what would be a good solution? Maybe we start doing grab-and-go breakfasts in the classrooms, or, all types of things. I was reading some recent data. 4 out of 5 teachers.
I was going to say feed on the bus before we.
That'd be good, yeah. 4 out of 5 teachers say that their children, when they come to school, I think this is some survey I just read today, come to school hungry. 4 out of 5. Okay, so if that's true, why are we not feeding? Why are we only feeding? I think our overall breakfast participation is so we're feeding 9.7% of the entire district overall for breakfast. Okay, lunch is 36.2. Okay, where I came from, we were serving probably 50% breakfast and about 70% lunches.
This is a good example of what Carl had said earlier about everything is integrated.
Yeah.
Because he's right. You know what? We are getting there less time probably than we were 10 years ago. So, then we talk about the effective bell schedule changes. If the bell schedule change helps me, but it helps him, which helps some other things, which might help me, maintenance. So it's a good example of, yeah.
But then grab-and-go breakfasts bring the food into the classroom and increase custodial needs.
Exactly.
So, it is all interrelated with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Chief, there's a system here, but it's not tip that, like lunches for elementary school, there's less time now.
Definitely is.
So that, that totally
Yeah.
impacts.
So, I'm a hands-on administrator. I don't spend time in the office very much. I'm usually out in the schools watching lunch, helping to serve. So I'm able to see how the field being played, how the game's being played at each and every single one of our schools. And that's why I'm seeing where some sites I'll see a 15-minute lunch. It's not called a 15-minute lunch, it's called a 20-minute lunch. In all honesty, it's 15 minutes. There's no way. When you go in the cafeteria, you can run a cafeteria like 2 ways. You can run like a prison where everyone has to be quiet. And there are some schools like that, and I hate that personally because obviously, if you go to school with kids to talk, they're talking about everything. They're venting. It's just like that's why the importance of PE for some kids. For me, it was really important. They're in that crazy energy that I still have. So 15-minute lunch. I'm just yapping the whole time, and then finally I'm trying to eat. And I see tons of kids just like myself that need that extra time. And unfortunately, because of education schedules and you get math and science, and it is total like Carl was saying, it is truly. We are so merged together, and it's definitely a barrier for us.
So I guess my question is it like last year it was lunch that actually saw the bigger drop, and
Correct.
The biggest was with free and reduced lunch students by quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is it equal across schools? Is it consistent, or is it?
So the issue with just with lunch in general, when they changed the guidelines with the required mandatory, 1/4 cup of fruits and vegetables, 1/2 cup fruits and vegetables, where we unfortunately become the fruit and vegetable Nazis basically. I think there are some children that actually are afraid to go, because in elementary are afraid to go up and not get it right. It's really sad. And so I'm listening to my staff, and they say it with the biggest heart possible. You couldn't. It's almost like a Mr. Rogers answer. Just will you be my friend? But still, there are children that are afraid of that. So we've lost some of that, unfortunately. But also, we just started doing some of my changes. Some of my goals changing when things that I said to get the job here. I wanted to do semi-scratch items. I wanted to do things that make that when somebody's opening a box, there's no soul in it. And dumping it, on a thing. But when you're actually making something, there's a soul put into it. So that's kind of the things that we're trying to do, and we're starting to do those things now. With the grilled cheese. And by the way, it's very popular. So yes, and then last year we had my taco. So I mentioned it.
So it's seen as distinct waiting for evidence. So.
Yeah.
And I would also say,
Allegedly.
yeah. And I would also say another element to this is exactly what Sue was talking about with elementary boundaries. We have a lot of our facilities that are maxed out in terms of the number of kids that can eat in the cafeteria at one
That's what I'm
time.
wondering, if it's just a crowding issue.
We have like
like
five
we're not
on that side.
Exactly. You have a lot of schools.
Elementary school.
Right. And with kindergarten full day, that added another lunch in
Not
there.
7, no. No, it's 8.
So looking at that, one of the pieces that we have to take a look at is there a rebalancing of numbers? Because many of those cafeterias can service 2 grade levels at once, if in fact you had decent numbers within that school.
Not very many.
So I think you'd be surprised at the number of schools that actually would be
Okay,
able to do
not
that.
in my school.
Maybe not, maybe not. But I do think is just looking at how we do that in a smarter fashion.
And I know what you mentioned, and it's probably not a popular decision with custodians, but I think where you will find schools that are having a very high percentages, they are serving a lot of those kids in the classrooms for some of the very reasons of Carl's. Cafeterias aren't big enough, and it's just not the buses being late, it's kids walking in late, and so they get in there, and then you'll find out that all the kids are eating, and there's not a stigma, everybody's in there, and then pretty soon you start having everybody eat. But it is an added, but I've seen it work. Training of teachers, this is the way, and the type of food that's going to be prepared for the classrooms.
Yeah, right now we have, on Wednesdays, we have some schools that are serving lunch at 10:15. That's breakfast time still.
Well, I speed is that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's.
Because of that very reason, just trying to cram everything in.
Well, and it's not that much earlier than regular day,
No,
10:45.
I know, that's amazing, but still, just get it in, and thankfully they will still want to get our programs in.
Especially with the full day kindergarten,
Yeah.
it's pretty tight. And I just had a comment. I was surprised, but also glad to see the comment that you're going to be adding vegetarian meals at
Absolutely.
I kind of thought, I can't believe we don't already do that.
I know,
Because we
yeah.
have so many students who have that health.
Absolutely, and there are so many fantastic vegetarian items. I've been kind of toying with a yummy bowl, a homemade yummy bowl, because we're actually
You
using
could take him down this trail from, he gets his own separate presentation.
Yeah.
It's okay, but either way, our
Thank
kids
you.
need it, and I think
Absolutely.
you would,
Yeah.
You should help families' numbers up.
I think so. Families' numbers
One
would
point,
definitely go
one point,
up.
absolutely.
So Tom, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I got 2 quick questions. One for Craig. I noticed in your report you were talking about the applicant flow for bus drivers. I'm wondering what the retention percentages are. How many people we're retaining year after year? And if that's increased with the salary increases?
I can tell you, no. And the answer to the second part is no. They're unrelated because of the type of employee that we have. We have more people that are on their back end of their careers. They've already finished something, retired, and they're doing this for the benefits for X amount of years, and then they're getting out. So pay isn't the primary driver. It's not the primary driver. It's the benefits is the primary driver in the work schedule. As far as percentage, I don't have a number off the top of my head. What I can tell you is it's been flat, or as far as the number of departures we had in the last 3 years since I've been here, it's been flat, and it's been about 35 to 40, right in that neighborhood. Our hiring, on the other hand, has our lowest in the 3 years I've been here is 45 added new drivers, and the highest has been 60 added new drivers. So we're ahead of the curve. We continue with the pipeline. And like I said, while the applicant flow has slowed, it's slowed more just as a matter of we're getting closer to the number we need to be. So we're just not as, I'm not doing as many crazy things as far as advertising and things and interviewing twice a week and things like that. We've cut it back from once a week. But we're still doing 3 to 4 interviews a week, every week. We've been 50 weeks a year. Well, we're here 30. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, probably I don't know how many weekends we are, but it's, we're there every week, just about every week.
If you were to make that a percentage, like your retention rate is blank percent?
Well, again, I'd have to get back to you. I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, it's fine. Thanks. And then for Steve, you talked about THPRD, LGA, and impasse. So I'm wondering, in what areas are we at impasse? And by impasse, is that going to endanger the entire agreement?
No.
Or are those areas you're going to kind of put off to the side of the parking lot and deal with later?
Probably more kind of a qualified of the former, or I'm sorry, the latter. we are moving forward. You already adopted the IGA, and we've been working on the implementing procedure. So kind of where the rubber hits the road. I'd say the two primary areas where we are at differing conclusions. One is with the middle school turf fields and extending those hours from 5:30 to 6 p.m. And then most significantly are pool access times for swim season. For Aloha and Mountainside, and then Westview and Sunset share the pools at the Aloha Swim Center and the Sunset Swim Center. THPRD really wants to have, we have for for the past several years, done back-to-back practices. THPRD doesn't want that anymore. They will do one afternoon practice, and then they will make time available in the morning or at night for practices, because they want to have regular programming time for their swim lesson programs. And what we've agreed to do is, in order to move forward and allow the schools to plan accordingly, is accept where we're at right now and continue to review the actual costs that we have, that they have, and if there's any wide discrepancies, then return to those specific items. I've been trying to explain to other users, for example, Board Member Tyner would know what I'm talking about with the Aloha Junior Baseball Organization, insisting on a number of things. And from their viewpoint, it is a one-topic discussion. But when we're talking with THPRD, it's so integrated with so many other things that where we will say, okay, we'll give on this, we're getting something else that people may not even think about, but yet it's benefiting our students and families. So we'll be doing kind of, I would say, a modified version of the parking lot in that it is an active parking lot.
Also asked Steve to prep a memo for the board so that you know where we've landed on these items. So that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. We'll present that first to Becky and Eric, get their perspective on that, and go from there with their direction.
I think so is there a timeline for, I mean, I know we've been working on this probably since we inked it the last time, which was a really long time ago.
Right. So this happened this morning, so I haven't been able to brief Carl fully on it.
No is an okay answer.
We have our internal stakeholders to meet with to say here it is, kind of thing. And like I said at the beginning, there are going to be some unhappy people all the way around, and that seems to be kind of what's going on here this school year. Everybody's unhappy about something when it comes to facilities. Right. You've received correspondence. We're going to be meeting with YMCA at the end of the month. We've got youth sports out there. I mean, it's, again, like we talked about last year, it's all about incredible demand, limited supply. And so what I will have to counsel everyone is patience, in that it's not, oh, hey, we're done. Stick it in a drawer and we'll pick it up again in 10 years. This is something that we're going to be looking at all the time. Just as we have regular coordination meetings with the city and the county, I have regular coordination meetings with my counterparts at THPRD. We have maintenance coordination. I do planning, property acquisition coordination. I mean, we talk all the time.
Well, I know we've gone over. I just have, I can put a couple of my questions around too, but one of my biggest questions I have was about the $700,000 that we brought in through facility use, through school dude, and that we have $130,000 we're returning to schools. I wondered if you could tell me who's the biggest to you as far as getting money back.
Don't quote me on it, but I believe it was Bonnie Slope that had the biggest return, but that's something I can find out when I get back to the office and let you know.
It was more my curiosity is whether it was an elementary versus a middle school versus a high school.
It's elementary schools because they have the daycares, and they get a cut of that daycare revenue. And there are some elementary schools, as you know, who don't do anything in their building, and I don't see anything.
So then my last question out of that 700,000, and then I know that you have the return that you're giving back to the schools between paying the monitors, extra custodial fees, that kind of thing. Do we have a net?
So yes, we do, and again, I can provide you with where the money goes, but of that $700,000, that is solely rent. That is not staffing costs. So the staffing is separate. We bill for that, and that is it should be a no net gain or no net loss because we are paying the staff for the hours that they work from the people who.
Right. So it's the overhead that you're charging for that. So.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
And so, in terms of what's happened over the past year, that money goes into the general fund. But moving forward in this current fiscal year, what we're doing is we are going to be moving the facility use team. So the revenue that we receive is going to pay for the facility use team, the facility use software, and then whatever is left over is going to be going to Paul and Nathan to supplement their maintenance budget because that rent is to pay for wear and tear of the properties.
And that was my follow-up question is, if we are making money, where are we dispersing it? And it would seem like we would, because of the wear and tear, we would put it right back into it.
Right. And I'll just say, again, in generalities, about, Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, but about half of that net that's left over would go to the maintenance fund. Or also known as Steve's money.
Steve's fund.
dollars.
And my question to Mike is, Mike, we definitely do not want students going hungry in our schools, and we do not want to call them out if their families are not able, and the shaming game, and we do. But at the same time, at the rate that we're going, and that we're 25,000 in arrears already, and that you've already put 7,000 as well as, to try to, is there any best practices around the state? Are there anything around the country? I know it's not just Beaverton that is.
Yeah, because I track kind of what's going on in the United States because I'm on this email list of different states that are embarking on the similar laws, and so so I've been kind of reading ideas from other districts. We're kind of a little bit ahead of some of those states because we started this last year dealing with the negativity of the accounts. I'm also part of the state group that discusses that with Hillsborough and Public and trying to find out what they're doing as well. Also, I'm also part of a group that's trying to encourage our state government, which a lot of people laugh when I say this, but they're trying to look at a universal meal program for schools, which I am heavily supportive of. Just for the amount of money that is spent trying to get money, process applications and things like that, that money can be best used towards feeding children instead. And so when I was asked to be part of this committee, I thought it was a joke at first. Like, really? You're actually going to look at that? Because I've always talked about it for years and years. Now we're actually, there's actually several state senators that really want to look at that, and I've seen some of the numbers that we're looking at and things like that. It's many millions of dollars, but it kind of makes sense right now. And I think, I'm hopeful that maybe go that route eventually. So I'll continue preaching that. I really wasn't for it originally, but after seeing how much money that we spend, like I said, processing applications, I have a team of 4 people that are working right now processing all the applications that we receive every day to help to get them, because we want them in the system as soon as possible, because otherwise they're going to accumulate negative balances, right? And so that's part of the $7,000 that I was talking about. And so for me, it just makes total sense. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just doing applications and phone calls and letters, and then sending letters home saying, hey, you were free. In fact, just on Friday, we received probably about a stack of returned envelopes from families this much in our district, because families, unfortunately, this is my theory, is they can't afford to live, so they're house jumping from rent to rent. And these are all people that are typically approved for free and reduced, and so we're sending letters and they come back because there's no forwarding address and like that. So it's been really interesting for us. So we're spending a lot of money. So that's kind of what our game plan is, and also continuing to talk to other districts. And that's kind of how we're tackling right now. We are definitely restricted because of the law, but we have been very, very creative. We don't allow a la carte purchases if they have a negative balance. So if a child does have negative balance and they want to buy an extra food item, we do say, I'm sorry, you may able to, and that's what we say. Some districts don't do that, but we have chosen to do that just because we just can't afford to continue allowing negative balances. And I also think personally, I think it's a wrong message. My children can't go to Fred Meyer and just take stuff and walk out. But also with that rule as well, it has made our lunch lines a lot faster because we don't say anything to them. All we say is, hi, enjoy your lunch, which is good, so, on that aspect. And then occasionally, once in a while, the children do ask the balances. Hey, is you got enough money? And that's great, but we just kind of process them through.
Well, I know if any of us have any other questions, we can follow up. I appreciate you all being here. And I think what it comes through loud and clear is you folks have such ownership for the area that you represent. It comes across how well you work together, and communication is the key. But the passion that you have for trying to do, and the pillars come through that how innovative and your commitment to excellence on behalf of our district and our students, that really comes through. And so thank you for putting all this information together for us and keeping us in the loop, because we're the ones that are answering a lot of these folks' questions. The only thing I do want to follow up, Steve, is we did talk about how we're going to address the middle school boundary and how we're going to be doing that process differently. And if you could just share with the board members what you have in store for how, because we're going to be doing this it's going to be a very transparent, but it's going to be a process that is laid out a lot better.
Can I propose that comes to you in a written form?
Okay.
Okay, we're in the process. Steve's drafted the memo that it's sitting on my desk for review, but with the intent that it goes out to the board so you have a very clear process. But at the same time, once it's received by the board, it will go to our building principals to then shove out to our community newsletters and so on.
So it's just safe to say that you folks, there's going to be a very thorough process, and a lot of our questions that those of us that went through the process last time will be answered, but there's going to be a very communicated process, better than when we started the high school process last time. So thank you very much for all your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for being today.
Just for the board, yes, it was kind of Carl's and Cabinet's idea. Carl proposed it. We just a different format to where there could be actually more dialogue questions. So any of the feedback that you have on this, it's evident that they will be trying to be concise. We need maybe could have used another half hour for questionings, but if this is a format you'd like to continue, because we just think it was a better way to engage. So anything you can give for us for input.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Maureen and team, sorry we're not going to think it's important that we get our questions. Sure, why don't she told me she's okay. I don't need to call her.
Becky?
Yes.
In similar fashion, only half of this team is my responsibility. I won't own the other half. But in similar fashion, they'll give some opening comments, add some depth to the reports that were submitted, but definitely engage in the dialogue, question and answer for everyone. Nope, I think we're good.
You ready? All right. Well, we have invited part of the team, actually, in the packet you saw the outline of our staff in the Communications and Community Involvement Department. And I brought some key players that I wanted to make sure you knew about, and I would also be available for any questions you might have. Like Carrie Young, of course, our Communications Coordinator, Melissa Larson, our Communications Specialist, Joanna Strout, our Volunteer Services Coordinator, and Christina Mackin, who is our Community Resources Coordinator. And a lot of what's in the program, what's in the report to you is their work. And I just am very proud to work with such a strong team, tight team, and get a lot done. I think one of the things I wanted to really make sure that you knew that we're very proud of the customer service. And we asked in the staff survey our administrators to give us a ranking. And we were just kind of blown away and so proud that we received such a high rating on our quality of service and what we do, and timeliness of service, clarity of communications, and customer service orientation. So I'm just really proud of this team. And of course, there's some people back left at the office, but inclusive. You'll see that we've laid out the report for you on volunteer services, community partnerships, of which we have Christina is shared between community partnerships as well as the AVID program and teaching and learning department. And then you'll see our information that we've got regarding AVID and the improved communications and community engagement. And I won't go through those piece by piece because there's a lot there. It's been a great year, and we'll just open it to your questions when it's time. And so, would you like to do that right now?
Sure.
Okay.
I just have one question. It's about the clothes closet and the fact that so many schools, especially high schools now, have like backpacks, they're giving food and they're giving clothes. Is that lessening the amount of people that utilize the clothes closet?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, looking at our numbers for clothes closet, we were actually up this last year. So no, I welcome the fact that they've got them at the school because it's that direct. But no, I have not seen that as an impact of clothes closet at all. And we're seeing, consistent numbers at elementary. We've actually seen, I believe, an increase at the middle and high school level in terms of students accessing the program. But no, I don't see that as an impact on closed closet.
I'm thinking about how we log volunteer hours and participation, and I'm trying to understand the data in front of me. Was there a shift in the way that we log those hours? Okay, and was that in the 15-16 year or the 16-17 where it was introduced?
15-16. We were doing both systems. You might want to speak to that, the better impact versus the health counter program.
Okay.
During the 15-16 school year, it was part of the rollout. And so we added a couple of schools each month during the 15-16 school year into the new system, primarily because of the background check. Okay. And so the better impact, or the strengths of better impact, is that background check kind of consistently across schools. And so because of the background check, we couldn't do all schools at the same time. So 15-16 was really truly our rollout year. And so 16-17 was just schools kind of starting to work with the program. And I believe I'm definitely seeing an increase in terms of the people who are using it, who are actually logging their hours in that sense. So yeah, there was definitely a dip, and that wasn't a dip in volunteers, it was a dip in how people were recording their hours.
That's what I thought. And are we at a point where you think that almost all the volunteer hours are being logged that way, or they're kind of like a set of volunteer hours that are off to the side that aren't making their way into the system?
I would say that it's, I kind of describe it as a cruise liner suddenly taking a left turn, trying to roll out a system like this. And so I think that the use is definitely increasing. We're not capturing everybody, especially at the middle and high school level. I think that's where the decline is. in terms of recording those after school hours, that is where we're having a bit of a struggle. And so, this school year, I'm going to be focusing on middle schools and high schools to make sure that they're engaging in the system and working that transition.
And the strong part about this system is that they can do it by mobile. So you can go online and you can actually record hours, and I see some of you do that. After hours, you can go in and put your, because we have evening activities, that we have games and concessions and things like that. Those volunteer hours you can count. And so part of it's an education process, and you'll see that we address that in the challenges section of the report here, that I think the consistent implementation of the volunteer management system is really, really important. And I've really tried to put an exclamation point on it this year because, Joanna has pretty much single-handedly, along with Candace Hyatt, managed to do the database. It's a big beast of a program because we're saying that all volunteers have to be through the system now, because that way we ensure that they're background checked and approved for service in our schools. And we're still working with some schools that are declining, to do full implementation of the program. And so this year is kind of a make or break year for us with that.
By the way, on that, I need to actually get on. I mean, I feel like an idiot, but I got like 670 volunteer hours in Intel that I haven't done on your systems yet. On your system, I get the money from.
Help you out.
Yeah. So maybe you guys just be a guinea pig, and then I can be a champion for.
Frequent flyer.
Frequent flyer. Yeah. Get miles in that.
That's why I'm blushing. I had to highlight, like, how do I do that? Just text me and I'll follow. Okay. That was my
I'm wondering if you can talk about the partnership with Univision and the choices that you made about how to proceed or not, or what impact we feel like it's making to our community or not.
Well, I actually just met with a representative from Univision last week, and we had a 2-year partnership with them. And due to budget reductions, my discretionary, non-salary budget has been reduced. With being such a small department, it's not any reductions to make. So I actually had a partnership that I put together with teaching and learning, with special education, and our department. So it was about $16,000 each. The bill is about almost $48,000. We did 2 years worth of programming, 30 and 60-second messages, and we've got a lot that we can actually use because we actually own that video, which is awesome, and it's on our YouTube channel. So we feel that we're in a good space right now to be able to repurpose that and reutilize those. The click-through rates, the data that she showed me last week were pretty impressive. She said that it's really almost like double what they typically will see of people, especially with digital and that type of thing. TV is a little bit harder to kind of ferret out. I think we've got some education to do with our families, but I think the point that we've got some really great segments about attendance, about registration, back to school, summer work, all those kinds of things will serve us well for the long term, and unfortunately we had to not renew that contract this year.
The partnership was about creating the assets, not about posting them on their channels.
Well, basically you're paying for a contract for them to be able to have the airtime. And it's really a much reduced, if you had to buy this in commercial rates, it'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars. They've got an education rate, and so the budget was set at $48,000. And it's a great deal. We have to come up with the messaging. We also send a lot of our own assets of video with Kara, who is our photographer and videographer, and we send them a lot of it, but they put it together, and it's there. And being able to place it, and repeated placements of showing those segments, and they're wonderful. I don't know if anybody's seen that would be in this. I remember Barbara Evans used to say, I remember seeing it.
Thank you.
Any questions? I have a question about the Be Here, Get There campaign. So could someone tell me, is it a statewide campaign? Is it a national campaign? What is our role in that campaign besides all the things that have been?
Well, we took the lead from Don's goals and his interests and all of our interests in getting kids and keeping kids in school. And we developed our Be Here, Get There campaign. That's a local campaign. The state is hoping to roll out a campaign. We felt it was important that we do it before school started versus the state is thinking it might be mid-October, it might be November. what's happened those first 2 months when we can really, it's a teachable moment. That's where, so we really wanted to go forward. And Kira, would you like to maybe speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, so it's funny because the research shows that good attendance habits are set in the first few months of school. And we were hoping to be able to utilize that campaign of theirs. It has some really good content, but I've seen some of it, but we can't use it yet. We plan to, we've seen elements of it, and we've been able to make our own versions of those. So like attendance certificates, infographic where we took an infographic and we put our own data to it and made our own version of it. But it's unfortunate that we couldn't use theirs in time. And originally it was set for mid-September, and then they pushed it back. And I don't know, there's a lot of school districts that are really wanting it, so I think it's unfortunate.
And to boot, we're tied into the national attendance works. And so in the materials we're pulling on, doing our social media posts and that type of thing, we just feel like we've got a good program going. And if the state kicks in, we'll go ahead and piggyback on their work as well and use some of the assets that they create.
So I have a quick question, kind of follow up if it's okay. I mean, I know you're, just in terms of attendance, because there's different reasons why children aren't attending school. So you don't want to assume anything. So I'm trying to ask this in the right way. Your target audience in terms of getting that and those kids coming back to school is what? Because I'm thinking about, I have a personal interest in that because last year I had a kid that didn't go to school, and it was a mental health issue. So just wondering how you target certain populations. And
I hear what you're saying, and I think part of the messages have to be that it matters for everybody. I mean, we need all of our children in school every day.
So are there resources that are attached to this messaging, I guess, that helps parents know that, okay, I can't get my kid to go to school, and then giving them the resources to get their kid to school?
So I think our schools are also, working on this issue very strongly with the counselors and office staff. I think it's a very personal thing.
Right.
And I totally agree with you. There are many reasons why youngsters aren't coming to school. And that's not that's not for blame. It's what we're trying to do is help elevate the understanding of how important every day is and how, if they miss 10 days, I mean, think about it.
Well, I believe me, Maureen, if anybody understands that, I know. So it's not like that. I'm just.
But I hope that you will have found some assistance.
Oh yeah,
in your journey last year.
We did. Believe me, but I mean, I just think it's really difficult, and
Yes.
I think my child is like it's a small percentage that's like that. But I just think of the impact of that, and just in terms of getting the message out there to all, as you point out, to all our populations, and to help encourage parents and it's kids that there's resources out there for them.
I think that point's very well taken, and I think our team will take that back and make sure that we know that there are necessary reasons of why students may not be coming to school, and that we have resources to help.
Because in our program, it works very well in concert with the dropout prevention work that we're doing in all of our schools.
Mm-hmm.
The success coaches at the elementary, Ninth Grade on Track, the graduation mentors, everything coming to combine together, it just really does target these very things, attendance and why you're not in school, what it is about school, barriers, everything it is about success in school.
Well, I mean, okay, and I don't want to usurp this, but the reason why I'm so sensitive to it is because I remember feeling like, oh my God, my kid's not going to school. I can't get my kid to go to school. And there's that parents trying to get their kid to go to school, and even that reminder might be hard for that parent. So I don't know how you fix it. And I mean, again, I think that was a small percentage. That's a small percentage of students that are in that situation. So, I mean, I know it's not, you've got a global reach there.
Well, and that's the reason I brought up the question, is to find out where, I didn't know if we got some special funding, but you're exactly right, that it comes in conjunction, because we know that our schools are making a big effort to follow up right now if kids have already missed 3 days of school, and it's all part of this, the same big picture. So that's how come I wondered if there was money that came from the state of just this little nice little catchphrase, and we're putting it on the BSD, and we're putting it on our website, and we're, so I just wanted to see what the whole campaign looked like and what the board's role was in helping you with that campaign. So I think that's a really nice that you brought it in, that there is a tie-in of I think all of us recognize that children can't learn if they're not here.
Well, I think the board really is such an important thing. I do think that you should consider a resolution. I know that we had some thought of that in the past, but I think that would be one measurable way that's very visible for our community to see that you're paying attention to this as well. So if you need some assistance with that going forward, we're happy to help with that. But we think it's just an important campaign. We don't have extra money for it. This is part of our work. This is what we do every year, is ascertain what is on the forefront, what's coming toward us, how do we tie into the district goals, the superintendent's goals, the board's interests, and what needs to happen. That's how we test.
Almost like John Taponia does a lot of research work. He said if you could only pick one thing and one thing only to do to increase student achievement or graduation rates, it would be to increase your attendance. If you could only choose one thing. The only other part I would think is, to Maureen's point about whether it's a resolution, proclamation, whatever you want to call it. I was just in a couple meetings this week, and we're talking about attendance and some of the different things that schools are doing. And you would think that, well, how do you think the board feels? How do you think the board feels about attendance? Well, of course, they want kids to come to school, but don't sell short when you folks come out with a message. You guys carry a lot of weight. And sometimes it's more weight with our staff than it is with even our community, believe it or not.
On the resources thing for parents, I know we keep at the state stuff, and they have some good resources that we'll definitely incorporate. We do have an internal page where we'll post the resources for staff and for schools to share, but I think that's definitely something we can look at, an external page.
Oh my God, that would be huge, honestly.
Those
That's a
things.
great suggestion. Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
Well, I just wanted to close with just saying, our community is so supportive, and you saw that I included, the levy survey results, and I always have to just remind us how fortunate we are to be in Beaverton and have such a supportive community. I think about the work that Christina has done, and you saw in the packet. She more than pays for the position that she does, and her work with AVID as well as the community resources. And so I just am blown away every time I do this. So just thank you.
We love our communications and community involvement team. They are great. We very much appreciate them and the work that they do. So I surprised my team a little bit by inviting them up to the table. So I do want you to know who everybody is. So I am going to have you introduce yourselves and just your role. Melissa, you start.
I'm Melissa Potter. I'm the University Partnership Liaison.
Susan Rodriguez, HR Administrator. I work with licensed staff.
And I'm Rhonda Hahn, and I work with classified staff.
Erica Marson, and I have the privilege of working with elementary, both licensed and classified.
So Erica knows both of our contracts. She's the newest member of the team, so she got that honor, I guess, with that. And I will say that since we've added an administrator, since Erica's position, in the last 2 years, I'd say we've doubled in disciplinary types of actions for both licensed and classified. Over the years, it's been steadily increasing. But in the last 2 years, it's actually doubled. And you might think that's a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you also look at evaluation data and looking at teachers that believe that the evaluation feedback that they get from their principals or assistant principals, that's been increasing as well. So I think it's our supervisors are learning better how to supervise as well. So some of that data can be really good. There are two areas where the data is actually a little bit different than what you have in front of you. And Tom emailed last night and noticed a discrepancy on the area of professional development has improved my practice. That particular one, and I'll post it online, or I'll have Mary post it online, I'll update it. It's not significantly different, but it's not as high as what you see here. I think when it was originally interpreted, they were looking at teacher-directed collaboration time and confusing it with that. That also brought up one other area on the whole piece about I feel heard about decision-making, that particular item, that data point. When they originally calibrated the data for this year and last year, and now she's corrected it, it was based upon teachers only, and the question, the survey question actually reads teachers and staff. So it should have been classified and licensed, so this will reflect that, the updated data. So those are the two areas for correction. Just one other area, before I open it up to you for questions. We're all very concerned about diversifying our workforce, and that has been an emphasis for us for, quite a few years now, and I'd say for the whole state. And you saw in the report, the different things that we're doing, and different people here will be able to speak to that as well if you have questions about it. But I guess I want to emphasize that this isn't just an HR issue. This is an issue for our entire district, for each and every one of us. When we conduct, say, administrator interviews, one of the things I tell every single interview team is, they're interviewing us. The candidates are interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them. And they are looking to see, is this a culture and a climate in which I can see myself working and staying for a long period of time? Is this, educators tend to be very family-oriented and very community-oriented, and they are looking for a place where they can make a difference. So I think that whole piece about, we can do all of these different kinds of recruiting efforts. We can do a lot with that. But we also, each one of us as employees, as community members, as board members, we need to be creating a culture and a climate where it is inclusive and that it is open and welcoming to folks. So I guess I would just ask that each one of us be an ambassador for our district in that area. And some of the things that we're doing in that area are working with our administrators around that inclusivity piece. And it's an interdepartmental kind of an effort as well. It's things like looking at what is the implicit bias, what's the unconscious bias, and what are the strategies that we can do to make sure that that we don't say that's a bad thing. We all have implicit bias. We all have unconscious bias because we all have different experiences. But what can we do to make sure we have multiple voices at the table, multiple lenses to look at this? So I think I just want to encourage us to all be involved in that effort.
On that, before we go on, just letting you know, I think Susan also, not only are we looking internally, but we're looking externally. We just went into agreement with our ESD to work with Hillsborough, Forest Grove, Tiger, Tualatin, and Sherwood.
You said Hillsborough.
Yeah, and to a program. It's kind of a grow your own program. We're really looking at our students and some of the programs. So looking outside our own internal to work with other outside school districts.
And we're meeting with Lewis and Clark as well, probably later this month, to look at an aspiring administrators program as well, with a focus on diverse applicants as well for that. Diversifying our administrative force will go a long way toward having that whole multiple lenses at the table. So, any questions? Ann?
I wanted to look at just a question, it's a conjecture on your part. The percentage of teachers that report improved practice based on collaboration and sufficient time to do so. though I'm in awe that the percent of teachers reporting sufficient time to collaborate is only 81%. So what in your mind do you think would bring them up to a high 90?
Everybody else.
What are
Okay.
they looking for?
So I am certainly open to others having thoughts about that, but I think I mentioned in the board meeting a couple months ago, it was the early release report, that it was surprising but not surprising that the lowest point for early release was really around that administrator-directed collaboration time. So they didn't value that nearly as much as the administrators valued that. They really thought that was making a difference. So there's a discrepancy with that. So I think dictating what all of that means.
So if we gave them that 1 week back,
We're not
every month.
going to.
I know, but if we did, we might get up in the high 90s. That's what, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And this team too, I just want to acknowledge this team, I'm sorry, Tom, but we've really had an interdepartmental kind of effort around early release and that implementation with teaching and learning, community involvement, and HR. So it's been great.
On follow-up on that data set Leanne was looking at. So I'm looking at the percentage of teachers reporting improved practice based on collaboration efforts. And I'm seeing it was actually quite a bit higher in 2013-14, but unless there wasn't any collaboration happening at that time, or was there?
There was.
There was, okay.
There was, and that was kind of the beginning times around, there'd been a lot of work around professional learning communities and a lot of training around that as well. And there was a lot of doing some things that since we haven't been able to continue to do where teachers would combine classes. The association doesn't care for that. They also were doing a lot of buying out of subs and all to give release time. And title schools could do more than the other schools could do.
I see. That helps me make sense of that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
One small question. Is this distinguished teachers, look like there's an uptick there? Is that just like a anomaly in the data, or is that just like, we're getting more proficient? Or getting more people in the higher distribution of excellent teaching?
We're just getting better and better.
That's what I want to hear. But is it going to go back down next year?
I'll let Susan and Erica answer after I kind of give a little bit of my thought on it. I think we're going to have to watch over time for trend data on that. I worry a little bit when you only have 2 or 3 years and you try to make a trend out of something and then it crashes and burns after that. But I do think we are, our administrators are doing a better job with evaluating staff. There's still some, in fact, from an HR standpoint, there's still a lot of areas we'd like to see improved, but it's much, much better than it was 10 years ago, say. I don't know if Erica or Susan, you have anything to add?
I would just say, just with the administrators being in classrooms more and being able to observe and having the 5D plus to streamline and really focus on areas has really helped teachers grow. So I would attribute that to them as well.
The 5D plus that we use for evaluation has been in use during the years that are noted here. So the first year where the distinguished is really high, that was our first year of implementation with this rubric. So it was that whole learning curve of learning how to do that and calibrating throughout our district. I agree with Sue, it's kind of difficult to extrapolate a trend until, you probably are wondering, well, how many years are you going to want then? Because we have 5 years here. But it is difficult to know because of variability between buildings, variability, even the calibration with principals is not the same. And then we have hiring differences from year to year as well. And all those things impact what you see here in terms of, I would say anything proficient and distinguished is a very, very solid, good score. And we tell teachers that too, that they don't get fixated on, you have to be in that quadrant. Of course, we want everyone always striving, but the difference between distinguished and proficient can be very little from year to year.
Maybe just look at the basic and it's getting smaller, which is good. You're not having people need a lot of work.
And that goes with the discipline data that she talked about, because it's related to that. Yeah.
I'm curious about the reduced retention percentage and what we are seeing or thinking about. Was that a result of a big hiring surge 5 years ago, or what?
Yeah, it's kind of ebbed and flowed, and there has been. And again, at the time this data was put together, we hadn't completed hiring. We're going all the way through September, and this report used to be in February, so we'd have complete hiring data. So it wasn't complete, but even with that, it looks like the retention rate will drop. And without having, we did do some layoffs last year, so there's been some of that. And I anticipate it's going to drop again for next year when we just budgets. What's interesting to us is that over time we lose people, but so many come back to us as well. We have people maybe go out on, not just on leave, but they leave because they're having families, and then they come back into the system. We have people that ebb and flow all the time. So it's still pretty high, but as far as a reason for why it would be lower this year, I don't really have a theory on that.
One other driver that would have an impact is retirements. As waves come where there are more or fewer of our long-term employees retiring, that's going to impact the data as well.
Just on that, we just heard from Craig Hawkins, a third of our teaching force could actually retire right now if they wanted to. As they start looking at some of the PERS and everything, saying that a third of our educator workforce could actually retire right now if they chose to do so. And then they were talking about, they're a little bit worried about that if there is some PERS reform, but they're also more worried about when we talk about retention. Now you can go across the river into Washington and a teacher can make anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 more, and they're already starting to see in Multnomah County some teachers and administrators, they're starting to see some of those folks trend over.
It really will be interesting to see the impact of the Washington decisions for us.
One other piece about retention that I just feel like it's useful to bring up is it has a relationship to diversifying the workforce, because when you think about a district like ours that tends to keep their teachers for 30 years or plus or 20 years, and think about where we were demographically as a district 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So our demographics are changing faster than our retention. And I'm not saying that we want to encourage low retention so that we can diversify the workforce, but you see that there is a relationship between that. If we're only losing a small percentage of teachers each year, then those hires become really important in terms of diversification to match the demographics of the community. Does that make sense?
I guess it does, and the setbacks are so big, is the thing that you noticed in 2012.
Yes.
And we don't have any tools at our disposal for helping with a scenario like that again.
So let's not do it.
That's my goal.
And if I can, you bring up an important thing, not only on diversifying the workforce, but as we start looking at more bilingual candidates and looking at dual immersion programs and everything like that, there's a real fear out there if you build these programs and then a recession comes along, and often sometimes those are some of our first hired candidates that ended up getting laid off, and it just decimates programs.
Yes, that's what happened.
Yeah. So I have on the staff survey that you got your data from. Can you tell me a little bit more, like how that is implemented, what time of year that is implemented, what the process is for?
Yeah, it's been, I don't know, probably in place for almost 30, not 30 years, but probably 20, 25 years. Back when Steve Carlson was in IT, and it comes out of teaching and learning. Teaching and learning and IT do it collaboratively, determining some of the questions. When we have some kind of new initiative, for example, early release, where we want some kind of data back, or with an ELA adoption or something else, those types of items tend to be in there. Some are kept as a stream throughout all to collect data over time. You know, there might be consistent questions. For example, the one that I contribute to decision making or something like that might be a consistent type of question. We've moved more toward the inclusivity, you know, over the last probably 10 years as well, around LGBTQ, those questions. It's typically given out in the spring, February, in that area. Most of the administrators and most of the principals would like it to be right after winter break, when people come back all refreshed. You know, but it's usually around the February, March area with that.
So it's different than the TEL survey?
Yes, it's different.
And the TEL survey is done about that same time, correct? Like early spring?
April, yeah. Yep.
And it asks some of these same type of questions?
Some of them are similar, yes.
And do we do a compare and contrast with that data?
Yes, we don't do it on paper necessarily, but we do review both, absolutely. And I know the execs look very closely at their school's TEL data. I know the principals look at all of it, including the district survey, that comparison back and forth as well.
And I know in the TEL survey, teachers are encouraged and time is set aside to encourage them
Yes.
to take that. Is that the same sort of method that we use with this?
No, this goes out as an email and multiple reminders.
Okay. Donna, since we talked to community involvement and human resources, do you have any questions of either one?
No, I just saw her being late, insurance renewals at my office. So I couldn't get out early.
Well, again, thank you for all of your great work and your dedication to our district, and it comes through. And I know it's a busy, every year is a busy year when it comes to human resources and community involvement, but particularly last year with all the heavy lifting that you did with the levy, because you were a very important partner with that, and keeping our folks updated every single week and all the different newsletters and us hiring the best of the best. So you guys do a great job, so thank you so very much for your great reports.
Yeah.
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second. The properly moved and second that we consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay. Yeah, I think we're going to go right into Rachel.
I was hoping to maybe, yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, you can do whatever, it's your time. You can do whatever you want.
Just hot off the
Whatever you
press,
want.
our newest data for our Urban Gleaners flyer just came out, as well as, thank you. Compost.
Oh,
Wait.
no. I got mixed up.
This is our industry partnerships marketing flyer that we do for, to get community involvement or community engagement through CTE. That's great.
Rachel, the floor is yours.
Okay, so, I don't know if you guys know me, I've talked about discovery over the summertime, but I wanted to introduce you to Gretchen Mollers. She's going to talk a little bit about Passages, which is not a Merlo Station program, it's actually a district program, but it's housed in our building, and it's a real important part of our story, because really to understand Merlo Station, we need to understand Passages, and I think we work very well with each other. And then I'll just introduce, this is Joni, she's the principal secretary, Joni Thurber, she's helped set everything up. So I'm going to let Gretchen talk, and then I'd like to take you for a tour around the building, and then we can come back and we can do some questions and answers. Thanks for the time, and thank you, board members. I really
deeply appreciate the volunteer work that you do on behalf of our community. It's important and often thankless work, so thank you all for doing that. I have some handouts for you. Two different ones on passages, and I don't know if you've heard of our program before, but it's a Passages Re-Engagement Program. So it's the district's program to re-engage our struggling students who are either engaged in some way, partially maybe at their home high school, or are not engaged at all. And so we go out and we find kids and get them re-engaged in some of the different component parts of passages. So if you see the one that's got like the umbrella on it, it says Passages Re-Engagement. Those are all the component parts, and you flip it over and you can read about them. That you can do whenever you want, or you can leave it here. Just a little bit of information so you know what we have to offer in our district. The other sheet is statistics on our program, and I went back from last year and then this year as well. And last year we had 331 students who were enrolled with us, and that's with 5 teachers and 1 registrar/program support. We had 65. Our students earned 65 GEDs, and we had 35 diplomas. So those are students who would otherwise be dropouts, like 100%. They would be dropouts. So I feel that, as you can see by the data, not only is Passages a good academic return on investment, because our other kids, if you didn't earn a GED or you didn't earn a diploma, they're earning credit and getting re-engaged with their education and figuring out what their path is going to be. So it's a great academic return on investment, and just in general, a great return on investment for our students. I included some data that I always think is important, because I think all of you could probably identify, like, who are our students in like our re-engagement program, like what do they look like, what are their demographics like, and I bet we would all know that. Probably high sped, probably a lot of students of color, and that's true. And you can see in those demographics that the district average, I think, for Latinx students is about 25% is the district average. We have about 48% right now of Latinx students. We also have currently 36% of our students are receiving special education services. And so that's just like straight up from Synergy, but we also give a survey to our students, which is anonymous, and it's based on the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. So all the data that you see in graphs is from that anonymous student survey. And I wanted to particularly highlight on the back the students' mental health needs, and I think we all know that that's a big issue right now, and that mental health has really been skyrocketing. But here's some like pretty concrete data over the past 3 years, just in questions that we ask of students. Yeah, I think you got my original. Sorry about that. So you can see it's held pretty steady. About 70 to 74% of our students have received counseling ever in their lives. About 58% this year have identified that they have mental health issues, and we get specific. We say, do you have a diagnosis? Do you take meds for something? Depression, anxiety. And then this is the saddest and most frightening statistic, I think, on the bottom. Have you ever attempted suicide? And that's jumped quite a bit. Currently, we have about 38% of our students who have attempted suicide. Now remember, that's not in the district. That's just our Passages students. But still, you can see the supports that they need. And on the front, and as community members, we're all aware of how home prices are really impacting our students in terms of homelessness and housing instability. And you can see that we've always had a pretty good chunk of our students who have ever been homeless. So 33%, 35%, this year it's 24%. We also ask students about their identities in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity, and you can see those are kind of really growing as well, as we know that demographic of students is growing and their needs need to be met as well. So we have about 41% of our students this year already who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or other, and 7% right now who identify as trans or gender nonconforming. So I like pulling out these statistics, and thank you for reading them with me to just kind of show you a little bit about like what some of our needs are, but that I think you can see that we have a lot of component parts of Passages to meet our students' needs, and that's one of the hallmarks of our programs, is meeting students where they are. We couldn't do that without the support of community of Merlo and the other counselors in the district, the social workers, the SPED teams. We could absolutely not do that without our community partners as well, Multnomah County, DHS, OYCP, Oregon Youth Challenge Program. So it really is it really is a team effort in Passages. So again, thank you for what you do, and now you have a little bit of information about our re-engagement program.
So can I ask a question? So, I mean, does enrollment just kind of gain as the year goes on?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Passages, so
Yep.
right now you have 110
Yep.
students, but you anticipate having more. And are students, in terms of going to Passages, like, is it an all-day program? Is it part-day? Is it like they go to their other high school and then they come here?
Could be, it could be. Yeah, so again, like in terms of the flexibility, like we have a couple students who are enrolled part-time at their home high school, but then just need a little bit extra reflection time and social emotional help. So they are getting services from Passages as well. But the majority of them, it's a temporary part-time program, emphasis on the temporary. You're gonna be able to take a pause with us, but we want you to, we don't want you forever. We want you to move on to your next choice, so.
And how would students find out about Passages? Is it through the home school?
Correct, through counselor referrals. Yeah, and we're getting the word out, counselors, sped case managers,
And
front
how
office
long
staff.
have you been? 2 years?
No, for, the 11-12 school year, I think, so.
It's interesting, as a parent, I've not heard of you.
Yeah, yep. I'm not surprised. So
Actually not good.
we've been growing too. So in the 11-12 school year, there were 2 of us. Yeah, 2 teachers. And so now we're at 6. Yeah.
Well, my comment about that is I had a child, and I've spoken about this multiple times, but that would have, your services would have been needed, but is it for upperclassmen versus, that's the difference. So
Yeah.
it's not for freshmen.
Okay,
That's
that's
really
the question.
important to point out.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I guess, because I was going to ask a similar question about the age group. So how does that differ from the other programs we have for younger children that have social emotional needs that don't exactly fit nicely into our regular school environment? If I'm not sure I'm being politically correct by characterizing it that way, but anyway.
So I wonder if you might mean like students who are in a like emotional growth center, like receiving services through
Because
special.
I know I have visited the center.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that kids are not, they're not at their home school, but they're assigned to a physically different location with other children that have special needs.
And I think that would be a special education placement.
So that's something different than
That's
Passages.
driven by
That's different.
IEP.
This
Okay.
is kids that are not attending school at all.
Oh, they're not attending school.
And it just so happens that, 36% or whatever
Yeah.
are special.
Having
that way. Yeah.
So I guess there's all these different programs around, because there's the program for the children that have been expelled, then there's this one, then there are the children, let's make sure I characterize them all in different boxes. Then there are the children that end up going to the program at the community college.
Yep, early college.
And then there's the younger ones. So this is a different bucket.
Yes.
I'm trying to get all the buckets in my head. Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My heart just breaks over that attempted suicide. That's 92 children.
Yeah.
So what kind of supports, I know it's an anonymous, so you don't know who those children are necessarily unless, it came out. But what kind of supports are they getting through Passages? Are there extra counselors or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the survey itself is anonymous, but we make sure that one-on-one our teachers do the survey like out loud with the students, so we know like what services we need to help them with, because that's a core part of our program is helping them with their non-academic barriers. And so often mental health is huge. So we're able to use Ted, our LifeWorks counselor here at school. We have a social worker assigned to us. And we work really closely with our students, with their outside counselors, because generally, if we identify them as having mental health needs, we're working to get them connected with outside services. Yeah. Yeah.
And just kind of piggybacking, what are those mental health services like here in Washington County? Maybe compared to the Tri-County area and then also the nonprofits? I mean, I have an assumption in my head about where we're at, but I'd like to hear where you guys think we're at.
I think more is always good. I think that when I say connect with outside services, so it's going to be like one-on-one counseling, and whether the provider determines that they need to meet once a month, twice a month, once a week, That's mostly it. Sometimes there are group counseling that happen with the family. And then in, extreme circumstances, students go to like the Perry Center or utilize those outside services, so.
But you don't feel like there's like backups in terms of our kids who maybe don't have health insurance or access to those services and they're going to the county? Is there?
Not at this point in the year, because I think they find that at the beginning of the school year, not as many referrals, but wait until the end of the year, and then it's hard to get an appointment, so families might have to wait a month and a half to get in, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things to understand, these are kids that would have no chance of graduating without this program. Absolutely zero. They've disengaged, and it takes some extra special care to bring them along. And sometimes the journey is a step forward and two back, and then finally you get them on. But working with, and sometimes they just the menu of services that Passages is able to offer is what it's really right kid, right time, right intervention. It's really focused on what the students need. So we'll have some kids that go over to Van to the complex over there, and they'll work over there. They could absolutely go anywhere. So it really takes an excellent resource navigator and folks really to find out what each of these students need, because their needs are so diversified.
So say another question that popped up because of the needs and the mental health issues, and it's obviously a very strong issue, is are you finding that a lot of the kids are self-medicating themselves? And then how do you help them transition from self-medicating to getting the help they need?
That's a good question. So I think connecting them with DNA services and like mental health counseling for sure. Yeah, and having just really open, honest conversations, and we have that relationship with the kids where they are honest with us. So.
Well, I mean, I'm so personally glad to know. I mean, I know I've heard of Passages before, but to know the impact is huge.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. Well, it couldn't happen without your support. So thank you.
So it's also a part of it, not only for us to get these students that normally their GED or diploma, do we also then, I would think that one of the carrots would be how we can help them, why this is important in their life, and how they can use this, why it's important for them to re-engage in different. So is there another sort of process once they are out of our program?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you look at the Passages umbrella, GED transition and CEO, what's unique about our GED program is that it's not just like, here, get this piece of paper, your GED. It'll get you a great minimum wage paying job, which is the reality. But we know that those students need extra support making that transition to their college or career, whatever they choose. And so we have kind of a real supportive transition to PCC, whether they want to do welding or whether they want to get a bachelor's in psychology. And that starts with some dual credit classes here with the teachers that they're familiar with to prepare them for that. And then off to PCC where they have access to our teachers as college coaches. So, yeah. I'll make a nice little transition here. So if you think of, this is a great visual, if you think of kind of the district's options as like an inverted pyramid, our comprehensive high schools are at the top, and they do an amazing job with like 85 to 90% of our students. Okay, and then the next chunk below them would be our option schools for the kids who might not choose that they want to go to the comprehensive schools. And below that is Merlo Station, serves a smaller slice of the pie, those kids who are just not making it at the options or the comprehensive schools. And then down at the very tip, that's Passages, catching really everybody. And I'd love to not have a job someday. Wouldn't that be great? So.
And we do get some students that are not attending school at all. They apply to our program, and Passages is a great way. I've got 3 of them that are coming over to us in October, where they can get back in the game, set some goals, do some planning, make some connections, and that before. So it's like a little stepping stone into our school out of that. Yeah, so good stuff.
So if they're not going, okay, I'm sorry for, they're not going to school, they're not getting the credit, so it's got to take them a while to get those credits.
Yeah. And we talk about if you you're tremendously behind, so you have to do some tremendous things to get caught up if a diploma is what you're willing to do. But fortunately, there's options outside the district. Oregon Youth Challenge Program, Job Corps Pivot, where they'll work with them until they're 24 to get their diploma. So there's those options.
You guys ready for take a walk?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with reading one of our students' essays. Maybe. Yeah, they're one of them's in the single digits. So.
Okay, they were. So that's not what I said.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with reading an autobiography from one of our students. She would I asked her, and she said she would like me to share it with the board, and that was okay with her. Her name is Mary Jane, and when our students were first starting this Discovery Autobiography and Art project, one of the things that I would go around and talk to the kids. Oh, what is your? And they researched their name and what their name meant, and then did some step-up art projects to that. And I remember going in and talking to Mary Jane and talking to the kids at her table. What does your name mean? They were so excited to talk about what it meant, and there's some symbols. When I got to Mary Jane, I was like, Mary Jane, what does your name mean? And she kind of looked at me and she's like, do you really want to ask me that? And I was like, yeah, what does it mean? And she's just like, Mary Jane. And I was like, oh, she's like, yeah, my mom smoked marijuana, and she named me after marijuana. And I was like, okay, all right. So but Mary Jane's an amazing part of our community. So I'm just going to read her autobiography. Kicked out, no credit, sleeping on someone else's couch. How could this have happened to me? I know people can be homeless, but I never thought I would actually be homeless. No, that wouldn't happen to me. I have a daughter and a boyfriend. We are a little family, and it couldn't happen. But it did. After years of butting heads and arguing with my adoptive mom, Anthony, my boyfriend, moved in at the end of my pregnancy so it would be easier for our family to be together, but we could still go to school without having to worry about getting our own place. And it worked for a while, but not forever. The fighting got worse, and it became an unsafe environment for me to raise my daughter. During one argument between my mom and Anthony, my mother was saying some really messed up things. I intervened and defended Anthony. At that point, my mother saw me as an enemy. She told me that we had to leave, and she tried to take our daughter out of her arms. Obviously, she did not succeed. No one will take my daughter. Anthony and I packed our little family in my car, including Stitch, my chihuahua. We drove off as my mother stood on the porch saying childish things to try to provoke us to fight. But we didn't give in. It's only what she wanted. As I drove out of the cul-de-sac where I grew up, I took a deep breath, knowing now that I had to make sure my family had a roof over my head. Homelessness couldn't happen to me. No, not me. I have a family. But it did. An idea set in that I didn't know if I was going to feed my family that night or if we would sleep in the car. My mind was in a million places, yet I kept calm. I put on a facade that was okay so everyone else wouldn't worry. Even though I wasn't sure if it was true, I told my family we would be okay and that it would all work out. Because the mom has to be the rock for the family, and the mom has to have strength for everyone right now. I would figure things out like I always do. After a month and a half of sleeping on people's couches, I did. I found us a place and came up with money for my family to get a one-bedroom apartment. Now there's a roof over my family's head, and I can relax and no longer worry about what our lives would have been without a home. I'm healthy, my family's healthy, and that's all I could ever wish for. So this is the story. She was a junior last year when she took the Smarter Balance test. She was close to 10-day dropping numerous times over the school year and did a lot of work with our student and family advocate, a lot of work with our staff in our early learning center, and a lot of connections with teachers. And I'm happy to say that this year she's had perfect attendance. She was late. There was one time when their car wouldn't start and she was late, and they came in just super upset about it being late about it, but doing really, really well now as a senior. And so when you look at like the story of Merlo Station, it's really you can't see it in our Smarter Balance scores. You can't see it in our ACT scores, in our academic scores, but hopefully someday you will, because I think you need to look at measurements for an alternative school differently than you would look at measurements for a comprehensive high school. And so at Merlo, we're working as a staff on defining like what does that look like? What is important for alternative schools, and how do we measure our success? Because we know that it's not this. And we know that every story doesn't end up like a happy ending like this one does too. So how can we measure what our success is? And even measuring success for Mary Jane last year, it didn't look good. I mean, her attendance she was showing up maybe once a week. So now, you know, it's having that patience to see the long term, see it out with these kids, with our students. So I included, you know, the students' previous school, like where do kids come from when they come to our school. And you can see, you know, most of 27% are from Aloha High School, and then Beaverton and Westview are 23, 21. We have all of the schools are represented here. I think we have 4 students from Mountainside, so not a lot of kids from Mountainside yet. This is the big thing right here. What grade level are our students? We have 3% ninth graders, 10th graders is 20%, 11th graders is 27%, and half of our school comes to us, and they're 12th graders. And so this is something I would like to work on, or we are working on, because the way I see a healthy alternative school is not just a reaction when kids are failing in their 12th grade and we need to get them graduated, so let's get them to Merlo. We should have a healthy balance of 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, because when we get kids that come to us as juniors and seniors, we don't have the time to work with them on their academic skills. Oftentimes it's just crisis management, and then we get them stable, and then they're done. So if we could have more 9th graders, more 10th graders, that I think it's gonna change what we do here at Merlo for kids, because it's going to be proactive, and it's not going to be a reaction to failure. It's going to be identifying students earlier and getting them over to us earlier. Next week I'm meeting with the middle school counselors to talk about our program, and so looking at doing more outreach to the middle schools to get more kids that are younger. Let's see, what else? So that I shared you with our Smarter Balance scores. Last year we served 29 moms and 2 dads, and we had 27 students or children that we served in the Early Learning Center. And then this is a measure, so like how do you measure alternative schools? Well, I think you measure them through attendance, through retention, and through, those are the 2, and graduate, and then 5th year graduation rate. So last year, 2 years ago, not last year, but the year before last year, 16, 17, we served 227 students. We exited 48 students, and oftentimes those students would go to the Passages program and work on GEDs. Sometimes they would go back to their home high schools. Sometimes they would go to a higher level of special education support. So those are and some of them did drop out. But 79%. Last year we served more students. We hung on to a few more students, but this is the big number that we're looking at, working on. Let's see. Do you guys have any questions so far? I should pause. Okay. Yes.
So I had a question. One, it was about. Sorry, I just said that word out loud. It's on the record. I did have a question, and then it just kind of lost. Sorry. No, actually, it was about students reporting that at least one adult cares about them, and I was really impressed with the rate of that.
Yep.
So I just wanted to, more. It wasn't necessarily a comment. I was really surprised by that, considering you read that letter from that student.
Yeah. And consistently, that's a consistent number too.
And I guess the other question I might have is that 25% homeless. It's tragic, and I'm just wondering, you have this one student that's living on her own, and I don't know if she's still homeless, or I think she found it.
She's got an apartment, yeah.
Is it mostly families that are homeless, and it's couch surfing, and do you have resources that you bring in to help these families? Is that something?
Yeah, so one of the resources that we've called upon, it's called Second Home, and basically they're these kind of foster type people that have an extra bedroom in their home, and they make some agreements with the student, and then you guys are nodding your head like you kind of are familiar with the second home program. But our counselors work with second home to find stable housing for our students that are willing to do that. Some students aren't willing to do that. Some students aren't willing to be there. They think that, the structure and just the couch surfing is, in their mind, it's working for them. And so, would never push. That's always a student's choice to access a resource like that. Yes.
So since we are the third largest school district, is this program like the third largest in the state, or does Portland have like a significant number and we're really small? I'm just trying to get the,
Portland, I don't know.
Portland or Salem, Kaiser, or Hillsborough even. Do we have comparable numbers to Hillsborough? Are we larger, smaller as far as
for alternative education? I think this is just me. I think Beaverton offers like the health and science and the ACMA and they're very like targeted and thoughtful programs, and I think that because of those programs, there's not this higher need because there are a lot more the alternative schools, and a lot of the times they're outsourced. Don probably knows more about, or David, about outsourcing of the alternative schools, and so they're not part of the district.
Portland is outsourcing. Their alternative.
Salem has is it the Barbara Roberts School, which is their alt-ed, which is similar to what we run here. PPS is mostly all contracted out. They're like Open Meadow. Carol Smith was the executive director of Open Meadow before going to the district, so they have more contracted alt-ed.
But the strength of not contracting alternative ed out is that we're still part of the school board. We still have all those resources and connections with the district and with the schools, and I think that's really important for a healthy alternative ed school.
Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
I have a comment just to affirm that I've been a long time believer that our alternative school here should not be rated as the same as our others. I think your success rate is those that you keep in school and get through at the 4 or 5 year or longer
6 year,
It doesn't really matter. And I know there are some other districts around the state that are trying to get. It's not that we don't want to hold high standards to our Merlo Station kids, because we do, but that we don't judge success based on those. And I know there's been a little bit of a movement at ODE to try to, they're not open to it at this point, but to try to maybe look at those alternative schools differently so that, one, it doesn't drag all the, because everybody looks at those across the state. But anyway, affirming that you're doing a great job here. It's about keeping kids engaged and in school, no matter how long it takes us to work with them.
And in my previous district, our alternative school was considered a program, and so and actually with Passages, the Passages are actually dual enrolled with their home high school, and then with Passages, and so they kind of do count with their high schools. We are just our own school, but my last district, our students were counted with our high school numbers.
Sometimes some districts will do that because you will have some high schools that, or whether they're in Beaverton or throughout the state, making sure that we're just not sending kids to alternative schools without doing your due diligence at the comprehensive high school. So coding those kids back to the high school gives a little bit more accountability for schools. And there are talks going on, like you said, there's talks going on. How do we rate alternative schools? Because for the most part, just about 100% of all the alternative high schools in Oregon would be classified in a targeted and assisted category because of their basically it's their graduation rates.
Well, and something I would look at in my last school is I would always pull up what are the district's special ed numbers and what are our numbers, and those should be equal. And then I would look at what is our minority population, and they should be not equal, but they should be comparable. And then I would look at the homeless rate too, and that I never thought should be comparable. I always thought that should be higher because we are providing more services and we do have more resources, and that would be part of like helping kids that are at risk for dropping out. But you know, and I think right now, or from our report last year, we had 75%, and I think the district is 35% for economically disadvantaged students with disabilities. The district's at 12%, we're at 36%. Everett English learners, district's at 15%, we're at 38%. So District Latinx is 25%, and we're at 48%. So that's just something to think about. I don't know what that exactly means, but that's just something I think it's important to be aware of and to track and to have conversations with people about.
Any other questions? So you were rolling out a new program at the beginning of this year.
We are.
And I know it's only a month and a week into school, almost 6 weeks. How has that been going?
It's been, you know, what it's been doing, it's been bringing up to light problems much sooner than I think they could kind of hide out under the rug, and it's been bringing those things to the forefront, and so which has been great because then we can deal with them, and then we can corral them and offer resources and supports. But looking, I go back to attendance. I know it's only been 5 weeks, but I actually thought it was going to be higher. I was a little disappointed. So last year, our attendance rate at this point in the year was 90%, and then this year, with Discovery, we're at 93%. So it bumped up. I know, but I was thinking it's going to be 96%. I was so excited. I wrote it down. I thought I wrote it down somewhere. The tardies too. We're being on time is important. It's a job skill. And so we've been tracking the tardies, and the second week of school we had 81, 82 tardies. It was in the 80s. And just this last week we pulled the numbers and we had 41 or 42. So it was cut in half. And I was just okay, kids are they're figuring it out. Yeah, I know. I write all the tardies lists too. So
I was going to say, it doesn't hurt that you're at the door every morning writing them.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you for hosting us tonight. We thank you for our gift. We don't get a lot of gift.
No, I know.
Thank you very much.
Not a lot of people giving you horseradish. But you have to read the little thing to know why.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I know, yes. I didn't even think about that.
What'd you say,
Rose?
Lynn?
It is
And
Rose
Rose
Merlo
Merlo
High
High
School.
School.
Oh, you mean instead of Rose Merlo High School? No, instead of Merlo Station.
So if any of you have been to Merlo's graduation.
That is a good idea. You're right. Oh, good job.
That you do have a very special relationship with your students, and that's where I noticed right away. I mean, we see all of our teachers excited at graduation, but your teachers are really excited about graduation, and you can see it is a personal investment for them, and that they were just as proud as any parent out there, and that speaks well to the relationship that you have with your classmates.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for lunch or dinner, rather.
All right, you ready?
Yes, once everybody gets done. Get one more dessert.
I'm going to bring the desserts in here.
Really important to have that dessert.
I'll bring them in.
Please say no.
All right,
I like that.
now it's time to get serious.
I just have to get my head wrapped around it if we are.
There is no packet because I wanted everybody to, when everybody gets back in on this one. Okay.
That's really great. You think she's playing games with our money?
Exactly.
So do they need a restroom break?
Okay.
This is not the restroom
This is amazing. This one? That's what everybody says.
I thought the lemon was actually, if you're a lemon fan, the lemon.
Oh, lemon was
delicious too. It's got it all over me.
All right, okay, we're all here, the floor is yours.
So the reason there was nothing in the packet is because I want you all to be, receive this just the way teachers should be received by the community when we do the budget listening sessions. So with nothing beforehand. So we're going to play, or we're going to do an activity called Budget Hold'em.
And it's basically normally it would be a trade-off game where you come with adds and subtracts and come with a zero. We're not in an add and subtract world right now. We're in a subtract world for this next budget year. There can be some adds. So you'll have a set of cards like these, and we're going to split you half and half. So we'll have 4 and 4.
Too many put together, Deb.
Yeah. So you'll get a set of cards, and there's quite a few of them, and you have to come up with a $22 million cut. There's more than $22 million of cuts here, so that's a good thing. These are examples of our best thoughts at this point. They are not everything, because we don't, the landscape is changing daily. So just remember that these won't be everything, and not necessarily everything that is here is something that will happen. But this is your chance to understand how we're going about this process, how complicated this is, and it's also to help the community understand those same things. So you will get, everybody's going to get a little budget scenario. So this describes exactly what's happening in our district right now. It's a 2-pager. And then behind that are a group of statistics that we got from Forecast 5 by using our Forecast 5 system that shows where we're spending our money. So it talks about elementary education, middle school instruction, high school instruction, operations, and central instruction. So that would be like teaching and learning, as well as central administration. That includes school administration because it is a 2400. It's a support function, so it's not included. We can't pull out the principals at elementary school versus middle school versus high school. They're all lumped in one category in our program budget. So we're all going to get this. You're going to be able to read through it. Then you're going to get your cards, and you're going to get a score sheet. You're going to pick one person to be your scorekeeper and decide what it is you're going to do. Everybody, each team, so it's teams of 4, each team gets 2 wild cards. So if there's something different that you want to suggest, you may. And or if there's something that you want to add, you can add something, but you have to come up with a cut that equals that amount as well.
So we have to just clarify this, straight up cut $22 million.
In this activity.
Right.
Yep.
And if we want to subtract something that's not in one of those cards, we have a wild card.
We have 2
How
wild
are we
cards.
going to know what that card is worth?
You're going to take your best guess at this point as to what it is. And you can ask me.
I think it's 22 million now.
Yeah. It needs to be reasonable.
Just like a legislator.
So I'm going to tell you 2 things that are not included in this deck. One is we are not including anything to add or to a reduction to either the rainy day fund or a decrease to the contingency. So.
Good for you.
First of all, because for the rainy day fund, this is not a revenue issue, it's an expense issue. And according to board policy, rainy day fund is for a revenue shift. As Dawn and Carl can attest, we just had a Moody's rating call on Friday. So they're very interested that we have maintained a healthy ending fund balance, but I just got an email saying, but you spent some of your beginning fund balance, so why did you do that? So even though we budget to spend some of it, and we budget for a full 5% contingency and a 5% rainy day fund, they want to know why we're not making it 15 or 20%.
Well, they should live in Oregon.
They live in the real world.
Yeah, they do, and as Dawn can attest, we have a healthy contingency of 10%, but There are other districts, even in Oregon, that have up to 15 or 20%, but nationwide, there are a lot of districts. Jessica has been doing a lot of, my budget analyst, has been doing a lot of reviewing of budgets, and she had 2 that came through that were at 25%.
Just as we get going, one of the things that came through loud and clear from the board last year was when we had our community listening sessions was to try to somehow convey to our community how difficult this work is and how the decision would go through. So I know that Gail and her team has put in a lot of hours and effort into this, and you are our guinea pigs because we want you to give us some suggestions as we present to our community. So.
I remember doing an exercise like this as a community.
No,
member.
it was similar.
Yeah,
similar.
We did. I remember it.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we do this with the community,
Is the important part our input on the activity or our results of what we'd like to do today?
both.
You've already given one.
We'll do a quick, but this is what I would do with the communities. Everybody would, we're gonna have like a big poster board, and it would have, 1 to some ungodly number that we have there. And each group will say yes, no. They'll go around with a little dot on the ones that they pick. And then we look and see what the comparisons are. Where did we agree? Where did we disagree? Why did you pick something? Why didn't you pick that? To get ideas from them, to see that it's not that everybody comes up with the same thing. And even though it's easy to pick some of the big ones, they may not always be the ones that are the best idea. So, what were your big?
Can we just read the list?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Early release, high school class size.
So that was your wild card.
That was
Those are wild cards.
The wild card.
Those are wild cards.
Oh, how much did you target it for?
8.7.
Wow.
That's a big one.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
It's huge.
How?
Then we,
Why did you say how?
we
Why? How?
don't get as long.
What do you
as
mean, why,
we
how?
usually-
How'd you get to 8.7?
That's a
$1.5
million
million
a day this year, and it's going to be that plus 7% next year, 5 days.
You got the facts people over there, the numbers people.
Just do the roll-up on the cost per day.
I'm not positive that it's 1.5 right now, but it would be, that would be the roll-up.
It's in the ballpark. It's expensive.
You look stunned.
No, we're not done. So what are you going to do with the 5 days? Cut them?
They have to- teachers-
Labor Day, we're back to Labor Day.
Well,
If we cut 5 contact days, we could be under hours in some schools.
You have to get rid of the whole thing. It's a budget exercise.
Yep. Okay, so we got
Thank you
that.
for doing that.
What else?
High school class size at 5.3.
So you cut it by, or added
I'm
3.
giving you the relative numbers because there's multiple options, right?
Yeah.
Option school class size at 832,000.
That was the plus 2.
Yep.
Reduced staffing at PYP in STEAM, and that was the 2,030,000.
Yep.
Reducing intervention teachers at the middle school, that's the 950,000.
Yep.
I just want to
There goes
say,
our most vulnerable students.
we don't like any of this.
No, right, I know. I just have to give you my feedback.
Tell
Just
us
so
how
you
you
know,
really
they
feel.
picked that one. We cut it.
We actually cut more than you did.
And is that, is that
did.
it?
They cut a lot more than
That's
us.
your.
No, there's more.
Oh,
I
okay.
can give you the,
Yeah.
if you want it to add up to 22, I got a spreadsheet here, so.
Yeah. What's the other number?
You're asking us to do it, so we're,
Right.
1,577,000 for the reduction of programs for the model study, the additional allocations and grades.
Oh, got it.
Reduction of 8.5 DLL teachers for 100,000 for elimination of collaboration for facilitator stipends for $500,000. Reduction of professional development support for 800,000. Non-salary budget in teaching and learning 200,000. Admin and support in teaching and learning 400,000. Decreased non-salary per pupil allocation by 5%, 195,000. Combined elementary and middle school newcomer centers, $165,000. And a reduction of personnel in HR, $176,000. And we are,
I'm still trying to find.
we're like $200 off of $22 million.
Oh, so we went a little over, so we probably.
Yeah, it balances out.
We were 20,
So
we
we
were
were
over. The last three, what were they? 'Cause I'm counting
Oh,
them
sorry,
all.
okay, decrease non-salary per pupil allocation by 5%,
Came to how much? Oh, there it is.
195,000.
Okay.
Combined elementary and middle school newcomer centers, 165,000.
Yep.
Reduction of personnel in HR, 176,000. And then we just wanted to add revenue reform on the end of this.
Plus 25 million.
Plus 2 billion to the state.
Oh, there it is, okay. So you guys overlooked, so they picked increased class size at option schools by 2, which was 4.3. Or not options, sorry, that's elementary, sorry.
Whoa.
Oh,
That
yeah,
one's
yeah, we
elementary.
didn't touch elementary.
Whoa.
We're looking for, and they picked increase at options by 3. No, that's gotta be middle. We're, boy, this one is, that's middle. Yep, that's middle.
We had to do class
option
sizes everywhere.
Yeah,
you had to.
Yeah.
So they did 3s
We took days,
at
we took class sizes.
middle, high, and option. And then they reduced PYP. So you guys overlapped there. And they also did the reduction of intervention teachers, who overlapped there. They did reduction of personnel and non-salary in the business office. You picked human resources. So we both went to. They picked the 150,000 reduction at baseline edge. Reduction of secretary banks, 71,000. Reduction of non-salary long-range planning department, 6,500. They agreed with the combined middle school newcomer centers, the multilingual for 165. Reduction of 3 paraeducators in multilingual. Reduction of program model study allocation at multilingual. Both agreed on that. We both agreed on the 8.5 ELL teachers reduction. And then they also picked the TOSA stipends at multilingual. And then the last 2 that they picked, you also did. So teaching professional development and the elimination of collaboration facilitators. So you actually had quite a few things in common. Your big things that you didn't have in common were you chose days and they chose.
It's the same thing that happened, 5 years ago, or whatever.
Right.
I
So, go ahead.
was gonna say feedback, and maybe we should be doing this as our state legislatures. I'm serious. This would be, if there's a way of having them look at, this is what our choices are. Fix it.
David, there you go.
Fix it.
That's the simple message. I mean, really, I think it's, if we could invite some of them to do this with us, I would love that.
Maybe it could be the Washington County rule of planning.
We've already decided it's revenue reform this year.
But isn't that revenue reform? I mean, it's like you're showing the cuts and
how they,
Yeah.
why they need to get to revenue.
right.
Don't you think what else can we possibly say in the end?
Because
They're
you're
not
physically
already
having to,
You're gonna beat them over the head with it.
So,
You just need to hear it from more
So are you
people.
ready for feedback about the exercise?
I am ready for feedback about the exercise.
I think that more time is needed to.
When,
go-
yes, you guys, the
speed.
listening session would have more time.
Okay, good.
We were actually.
Now, that was really fast.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be a discussion as to why these certain items were picked for slashing.
So it's not core, like these are
Right.
variable things.
Well, I know, but I said, I don't believe there wasn't an explanation.
Yeah.
We talked about the situation, but we didn't talk about the choices, because a lot of it is a transparency. People want to know why things are chosen. And so if they have an idea of why these things are chosen and why other things aren't, I think that should be part of the intro before people launch in.
So I'm making the assumption that with your with your internal budget team, that you've asked each of your departments to come up with their own budget right now, and that these were
That's what I was.
their suggestions right off the bat.
That is where a lot of these came from.
That's what I would, I mean, 'cause
And
it's not like.
so it's not the internal budget team itself, but
Well,
it's.
I mean, I know,
it's
I
the
mean,
budget.
But we're talking about members of the public who are clueless about.
Right.
So we have to set it up for them.
And that's why that forecast 5, because, you know, we don't know what the difference is if we pull something or what, you know, how many students does this impact? How many, but at least to know that, you know.
Having said that, Becky, I think the forecast 5, when you look on the back of there, that really gives you some insight in there that we look at, just like, I mean, everybody will always say, you know, hey, it's cut central services, and most people will cut central services, but I think when you look at Beaverton Central Services compared to everybody else, I mean, we're bare bone, and, you know, I think some of those things, but, you know, I think the general public will, they want to hold kids' services as harmless as can be, but knowing that, you know, we still have to get payroll out, we still have to hire people, we still have to fire people, we still have to do investigations. And
So I think on these, one of the things that might be also important to show, it shows percentage of our budget that are spent on each of these places, as well as the cost per pupil. But if that was a dollar amount, and we took elementary, middle, high, and the associated pieces that go with that, which we can pull as far as administration, like we can pull it another way, not through forecast 5, but we can pull it another way, so that they have an idea that schools cost, just at the schools make up this much, operations makes up this much. So they have a visual to see what that piece is. There's not enough to cut just operationally, unless we're not going to have any transportation, which we can't do. So a little more description probably of what are the things that we can and can't cut.
I would have 2 comments. One is, I think you ought to briefly walk the community through these rather than having them look on their own.
Yes.
Because you felt like you needed to get to the exercise, so you glanced at these, but have an understanding, and the only way to get it is to present it. I don't know, my feeling was this was way too many things for me to get my head around.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, half of this amount, I know what you're trying to get at, but, you know, it was just too hard to read through all of them, and then at first you think, why do I even care about 65,000, because now I need a lot of those to get me to the, so I don't know if some of these could be condensed a bit or not, but that's just my
The only
working
thing is if you take just the big, I mean, at least I want to know, when I'm doing budgeting, everybody's got to feel a little bit of the pain. They can't be, and we know 85% it's personnel, it's, you know, so at least if all of these departments, and even though they're small, and you want everybody to have skin in the game and feel the pain and, you know.
Another way to do that then would be just to say percentages. Right. And instead of saying every little thing within HR that we might be able to cut, say, you know, X% from HR, assuming that HR is going to make the best choice they can. And just as an example.
I just think, it is, from 40-some to.
And we also talked about most of our community, if we as board members don't even know what these things are, you know our community is going to read this and not have a clue of what it is.
And I was also going to say, we just sat through the operations side, you know, in terms of the reporting, and the need is so strong, and if we don't take care of certain things, we're going to have even more expenses. But the community is going to look at, you know, the operations side, going, well, it's not teachers, it's not the classrooms. You know, they're going to say cut that. I mean, because
I'm going to be really curious, since we've never, those folks that we have on our budget committee now, I'm going to be really curious to see what they have to say, because they're the ones that have really wanted to see some more of the meat.
And I would have thought that actually I've been trying to guess what their questions would be today, and I was surprised to not see a bigger connection between what the choices were here and some of the strategic investments that we've made over the time.
Yeah.
That's
Cutting strategic investments.
So
So the
multilingual
is one, and part of the SPED is another one.
So just make sure they use the same language then, instead of detailing out bit by bit. You know, right now it was class size
and a little bit of SPED and a little bit of DLL, but there weren't a lot of other choices that they were used to seeing.
Yeah, the professional development in teaching and learning is part of a strategic
And
investment.
maybe you need a quick strategic investment form up on, that says, in the last 3 years, we have invested in these, or even in the last 2 years.
We just can't switch language.
No,
right.
Whatever people get used to.
Yeah, right. Which is why on the front of that, I did talk about some of the things that we have invested in early learning and student success coaches.
Some of this was like
on this, the pieces, but I don't have any dollar amounts there. Or, so we can do some of that. We have some charts from the budget doc that would work really well there.
So you're gonna show like maybe the pie, like this $5 million pie, and where everything is, like in the classroom facilities. That'd be good. 'Cause that way, I mean,
Yeah,
I see
not
people saying it.
necessarily another bar chart.
No, actually the bar chart was hard to.
Like I said, you can't really cut, like transportation, you can't really cut it.
But I think, one way to do this might be to just focus in on the big items. Because, I'm just saying, just a suggestion, just focusing on the big items for the members of the public. Because that'll be an easier discussion, it'll be a lot easier for people to make a decision, as opposed to having everything in the kitchen sink and the little things. And then we can get a beat on them regarding, should it be days? Should it be class size? Whatever, whatever those big ticket items are. That's just my suggestion. I know.
I didn't think these were particularly helpful.
Okay.
They were hard to read, and it didn't give me anything for my decision making. I think I understand what you're saying, because in a lot of ways we're like leaner than other districts, and we put our money in the classroom, and I think that's awesome as maybe like a background document, but I don't know with all this prioritization if I spend too much time there, because I think people will learn really quickly that you're not going to get to $22 million cutting second services. You can't make that puzzle.
Yeah, and that's just what I remember from 2012, is that's exactly what people want to. They want to take, and it takes you 10 minutes to figure out, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get there. But you at least see that, all of it adding up, but you've got to have those big, you're just never going to get there.
So I have a question in terms of what we just went through in terms of potential cuts. There's still going to be more going through, and there might be some new initiatives that we're looking at.
Yeah, so as we're getting the rest of our metrics in this fall for some of the work that we did the last few years, we'll be seeing some of that return on investment of more of our pieces. And so that's why I say, and I want it to be really understood, that this isn't the end all of everything that we're going to look at, because there's still other things out there that we haven't had a chance to look at, because we don't have all of the information on it yet.
The other thing that may come too, and David can help, I think, and Leanne probably knows this, I think when revenue comes out this year, I think you're going to see some siloed money. So there will be some money that's either allocated for social and emotional learning, for early childhood education, if they fully fund CTE, and depending on how they add that money up to come to us, it may make up some of our decisions on how we spend money, if that makes sense.
So you're meaning that we might have to, that we won't see any more money coming to us, but we have to spend it a certain way?
No,
I
think we'll see.
I want to clear.
It's siloed.
No, I understand that part.
Yeah, so some of it might be able to be used, and other pieces of it might just.
So like it might offset some of the high school cuts that we
Okay, that's what I needed to hear.
Or the amount that we spend on intervention or social workers, whatever, it'll be able to come from an entirely different pot. So we don't have to spend it in our fund, but it would still be money coming to us that we're still using the same resources.
And Dawn named the big three.
Yeah, but as long as it doesn't require new spending.
That's what
If, like Measure 98, required everything to be new or increase. So that was helpful to us in that we were opening Mountainside. And we were already going to increase CTE at Lower High School. And so we had plans to do that already in the budget, so it offset things. If it's just that we have to put it into new pieces, then yes, it's not necessarily a boom for us.
For instance, our student success coaches, which we've invested about $1.5 million, we would I would just say, fight like hell to say, hey,
Right.
we went ahead and made this investment ahead of you, or some of the money that we've invested in early childhood education. And we'd want to say, we don't want to see us having to say we're supplanting.
I cannot imagine after them just doing that state tour, that they would think that any school district would think the way to do this is by having new things that we have to, I mean, everybody over and over again, they can't pay for the things that they have now. I just can imagine that would be.
I'm getting cynical on this. I already said
I'll
one
wait to see, have a wait and see posture.
So are there any, I guess I would ask, are there any other big ticket items that you would want us, that maybe weren't on the cards, that you want us to get dollars
Well,
to?
you have it already, days.
Cost of a day will be.
Well, I have a question about, like, let's say we changed our option, K-8 options, would that save us money having kids that are in the K-8 program that are in the middle school going to the comprehensive middle school? Does that save anything, or does that really just, it washes out?
It doesn't save a lot. It's there, what we have at each of the special allocation for each of the K-8s is basically 1.0 APU that they can use at Rolling Hills. It's being used for technology, and it's given to them in technology. At Aloha Hubert, it's dual language, and at Springville, it's expeditionary learning. That and possibly some busing, but there's not a whole lot that is, they're all pretty much everybody from there.
Talking about the K-8 and the 6-8,
Yeah.
there is potential cost, not for program purposes year to year. It's typically, we had portables because to accommodate the growth in various areas, and the 6-8 is kind of pushes us up, and as we had pre-K, space is going to be limited, so we're going to have to just continue to add portables to those locations. And those portables are costing us upwards of $300,000 now, a year alone.
They're probably all mildewy too.
Yeah,
I've been in.
Okay, the one you were in.
Yes.
Susan, you're exaggerating. Stop.
So if you think of anything else that you want to let me know about, please feel free to email me. Let me know your thoughts.
On those notes, I have questions, say, members, are they coming in?
Yes, I have, Maureen gave me the lists, and I can get that to you.
Okay, I didn't know if we needed to go.
The only one that else shows on
I think I had.
I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Because my old one, don't let me apply, so we'll see. I know, that's all right. I'm not, I'll be, Maureen, the staff did already check to make sure that there is a.
Candace, I'm gonna go around you.
Oh, I gotta make a note.
They got that idea.
Maybe got the idea. Okay, guys. Okay, this concludes our work session for today. Our next meeting will be a special work session on Monday, October 22nd at 5:30 at the Beaverton School District office. This work session will review the audit of the district sexual harassment reporting and response process. Megan Farrell, the consultant hired, will present the audit to us, and we'll report to the school board. So we'll have dinner, we'll hear the report, we'll adjourn, and then we'll start our regular report.
Open session?
Yep. It's just a special work session that we're going to have before board meeting. I thank everybody for being here tonight. Sorry it was done a little bit late, but good information. Yeah.
We have a community.
Before the before.
Yeah, okay.
No.
I got a meeting. 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 I got a meeting.